Chapter 616. Every ice sword fragment turned into an extremely cold aura that drilled into Yu's flesh and blood, embedding itself like iron nails. Kacha! Kacha! Light blue ice instantly covered him, turning him into an ice sculpture. It was like a seal that suppressed all of Yu's aura. Within his soul space, a black dot appeared. It broke out of its shell, and countless black roots drilled into Yu's soul. The originally deathly, still black dot began to emit dull, thumping sounds. Like a heart that had been activated, it began to gradually synchronize with Yu's heartbeat. On the surface of his body, the light blue ice began to break apart, falling off piece by piece. This was because it had completed its mission. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood. Before it could fall, it froze into a block of ice and fell to the ground with a light smacking sound. Yu seemed to awaken. He looked up at the indifferent Shun Yuanin. His lips moved, but before he could speak, his body slumped to the ground. The four old monsters guarding the immortal slaying sword array all revealed looks of ecstasy. Indeed, a woman's heart was the most poisonous. The Nine-Heaven Palace Master had severely wounded Yu without any effort, taking advantage of his weakness to take his life. They were all experienced characters. They naturally wouldn't miss out on such a good opportunity. Extinguishing immortal, slaughtering immortal, exterminating immortal. The four old monsters stood up at the same time. The sword curtain rumbled as trillions of sword lights roared out. Kill! The sword curtain rapidly shrank. The howling sword lights began to rapidly fuse together, turning into even clearer sword phantoms. The sword phantoms rose up and pointed straight at Yu. Before they even arrived, they already released an aura that could destroy all. The Buddhist nation's sovereign and nether domain master glanced at each other, puzzlement in their eyes. But it soon disappeared. Although they didn't know why the Nine-Heaven Palace Master had attacked Yu, they only wanted the result. The current situation was even better than before. With a wounded demon sovereign, the difficulty of killing him would undoubtedly be much lower. However, right at this moment, the two's expressions changed simultaneously. The shrinking curtain of swords suddenly came to a halt. In the next moment, a massive gap appeared on the surface of the sword curtain, as if it had been ruthlessly cut by a saber. The figure of a man and a bird appeared beside the gap. The strange three-legged bird was retracting its wings. Obviously, the gap in the sword screen was caused by it. A few black feathers fell to the ground. The strange bird's eyes turned cold as it roared. "You four old bastards, you just destroyed my feathers." With a flap of its wings, the monstrous bird flew out with a speed as fast as lightning, diving into the sword screen. Dojo Master. Solitary Westgate. Although it was only a back view, the aura of a supreme being was as dazzling as the sun. And that hateful three-legged bird. The two of them simultaneously thought of what happened in Four Seasons City in the past. It seemed that Solitary Westgate and the Demon Sovereign had reached some sort of agreement. This was troublesome. Although they were all supreme beings of the world, there were still differences in strength. Even the masters of dojos in the world could be ranked in the top 3. While it was impossible for him to fight 3 of them alone, it was not difficult for him to disrupt the situation and take away the Demon Monarch. Furthermore, even though he was seriously injured, the Demon Emperor was still the Demon Emperor. He was not to be underestimated. But today was an excellent opportunity that they absolutely could not miss. The Buddhist nation's sovereign and nether domain master stepped forwards. With a flick of their sleeves, they tore open the sword screen and entered. It wasn't that they wanted to destroy the immortal slaying sword array, but that they were well aware that since that strange three-legged bird was angry, the sword array was meaningless. It was the nemesis of all array formations in the world. No matter how powerful they were, they could easily destroy them. And indeed, when the Buddhist nation's sovereign and nether domain master entered, the sword screen was already riddled with holes. The strange three-legged bird screeched as it fled in all directions. Wherever it went, the sword phantoms would collapse. The explosive strength was causing damage to the sword screen itself. In simpler terms, they were using the strength of the sword screen to destroy it itself. Woodchopper Fu nearly cried out a grievance. These four old fellows had summoned the greatest courage of their lives and used the spies they had prepared for countless years to finally drag the immortal sect and the Yin Empire into this quagmire. They were just about to succeed, so why did they have to jump out? What did this matter do to them? Between people, can't there be a little more? A simple beauty of helping others achieve their goals? Moreover, if they came, then they came. Why did it have to be the Tao Arena Master and that strange bird? As Woodchopper Fu saw these two, his legs couldn't help but shiver. It was over. Today's plan was doomed to fail. In the future, he could only wait for the crazy retaliation of the demonic path. Woodchopper Fu suddenly stood up. Without saying a single word, he turned and left. Maintaining the sword array and working together? To hell with it. His life was the most important. Just as he turned around, he heard the sound of the immortal slaying sword array collapsing. Woodchopper Fu cursed inwardly. These bastards. Luckily, I ran away quickly to be able to live like a mouse until now. It wasn't just because of various life-prolonging methods, but also because he was as timid as a mouse. Seeing the situation turn bad, he didn't care what the consequences were. In order to survive, he would do anything. The Tao Arena Master's eyes were ice cold. As he looked at Woodchopper Fu and the other three fleeing, he coldly humphed inwardly. Qin Yu was his turning point to resurrect his wife and child. Before this was achieved, he was of paramount importance. Wanting to kill him was undoubtedly challenging the Tao Arena Master's bottom line of tolerance. Today, it wasn't convenient for him to chase them down. But Solitary Westgate would remember this matter in his heart. To be remembered by such a terrifying supreme being, the consequences would undoubtedly be horrifying. The Buddhist nation sovereign frowned. What bunch of useless trash. They didn't even have the courage to fight to the death, and yet they wanted to comprehend and transcend the great terror of life and death. They were simply dreaming. Even if another 1,000,000 years passed, or even 10 million years passed, they were still doomed to accomplish nothing. He took a step forwards and looked straight at the Tao Arena Master. Today's war between the immortal and demonic realms has nothing to do with the Tao Arena. If fellow Taoist Westgate can withdraw, the entire immortal sect will be eternally grateful. Even if they knew the chances weren't too high, this was the respect that should be given to a supreme being of this world. The immortal slaying sword array loudly collapsed, dissipating from the world. The three-legged strange bird hatefully stared in the direction that the four old monsters fled in, its eyes filled with cruelty. It let out a strange cry and flapped its wings to fly back. Don't be delusional. The demon sovereign is my master's friend. If you know what's good for you, then go and do what you need to do. Stop wasting your breath here. The Buddhist nation sovereign's eyes were ice cold. As a supreme being of this world, his dignity could not be offended. If there is a chance in the future, I will take you into my Buddhist pagoda and use the power of trillions of Buddhas to enlighten you. The three-legged strange bird cursed out loud. You damned baldy, what nonsense are you spouting? If you want to fight, then come at me. This bird lord has never been afraid of you. Its momentum was arrogant, but as it spoke it flew behind the Tao Arena Master, blocking the Buddhist nation's sovereign's line of sight. Shut up. How could the status of the Buddhist nation's sovereign allow you to offend him? Solitary Westgate berated. He cupped his hands together and said, Buddhist nation sovereign, domain master, I have been entrusted by the demon sovereign to accompany him to the immortal sect and ensure his safety for the time being. If possible, I ask that you give me some face and allow me to send the demon sovereign away. The nether domain master had no expression. Fellow Taoist Westgate is strong, and we admire you endlessly. But my immortal sect's three masters are also present. Fellow Taoist Westgate, I ask that you reconsider. The immortal sect has never had any thoughts of becoming enemies with the Tao Arena. Solitary Westgate glanced at the deathly pale Qin Yu. He lightly said, The immortal sect's three masters are present, but that doesn't mean they all have thoughts of killing the demon sovereign. The air suddenly fell silent. Shun Yuanyin said, "I've already said that the demon sovereign will leave today. If it weren't for their status, the Buddhist nation sovereign and nether domain master would have cursed out loud. Big sister, just what is the meaning of this? The one who severely wounded the demon sovereign and created the opportunity was you, and now the one who jumped out to oppose killing him is you? Are you playing with us?" If the three masters joined forces, then even if solitary Westgate protected them, they still had a chance of killing the demon sovereign. But looking at Shun Yuanin's intentions, it wasn't just withdrawing. Once they attacked, she would turn hostile. The Buddhist nation sovereign and nether domain master paled. They angrily coughed and turned to leave. Today was simply a farce. "Thank you, Nine Heaven Palace Master." Solitary Westgate cupped his hands together and then teleported away with Qin Yu. Shin Yuanin stood where she was. She lowered her head, covering up the pain deep in her eyes. "Qin Yu, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." Once the sublime lost emotion code reached large success, there would be no turning back. If Shun Yuanin admitted that she was Ning Ling, she would suffer a terrifying backlash. Her soul would wither away and she would die. If she died, Qin Yu would surely be heartbroken. If he were to blame her for this, Ning Ling feared he would choose to end his life. Thus, Shun Yuanin had to ensure that she was still alive. She had to bury Ning Ling in Qin Yu's heart and have him give up on searching for her. This was also the so-called cycle of samsara. When that eye sword exploded just now, it wasn't Shun Yuanin who attacked. To be more accurate, it was the large success will of the sublime lost emotion code within her. Because of the backlash from before, she had already begun to show signs of losing her will. Qin Yu, you have to live, you have to." As she whispered to herself, Shun Yuanin's face paled. Dark red blood leaked out from the corners of her lips, falling onto her white dress like a blooming flower. Space shattered inch by inch, collapsing inward. Shun Yuanin closed her eyes and fell backwards. Immortal Sect, Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace. Shun Yuanin walked out from the shattered space. Cold energy lingered around her, and with every step she took, layers of ice would form around her. Lan Rua's footsteps came to a sudden stop. Her eyes widened. "Honorable Master." Before she finished speaking, her eyes turned red and her body shivered. Shun Yuanin's eyes were icy cold, as if the midwinter wind could penetrate into her bones. She turned her head slightly and felt her soul freeze, finding it hard to think. Within Lan Rua's body, the sublime lost emotion code automatically revolved, resisting the terrifying oppression. This seemed to awaken Shun Yuanin's consciousness. She paused and looked away. "I'm fine." She continued forwards, her figure gradually vanishing from the hall. Snow began to fall from the skies. Massive snowflakes covered the earth, turning the world into a vast expanse of white. With Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace as the center, the temperature crazily fell. Rivers rapidly froze over, and the trees that swayed in the wind came to a standstill. If one were to look up from the highest heavens, they would be able to see white ice and snow spreading outwards at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chapter 617. Four Seasons City, Doubt Arena. Looking at the white-haired Qin Yu, who had a weak aura and was in a trance, Solitary Westgate didn't feel any disdain or confusion. Rather, he was filled with understanding and sympathy. This was because he was a deeply sentimental person to begin with. Because of the death of his wife and son in the past, it had formed a knot in his heart, causing his mind to be unable to reach perfection. He had never been able to take that final step. Perhaps in the eyes of others, when one's cultivation reached such a level, they would already have the world in their hearts and would instead be trapped by their emotions. But in this world, there were always some stupid people. Even if they knew something was wrong, they still couldn't be controlled by reason. But whether it was because he appreciated Qin Yu, approved of him, or simply considered reviving his wife and son, Solitary Westgate wouldn't stare helplessly on as he fell into depression like this. He hesitated for a moment and looked at the muddle-headed Chinyu lying on the bed. Solitary Westgate said, "Are you disappointed in today's confrontation with the Buddhist nation's sovereign and nether domain master? Do you think the legendary supreme beings of the world are nothing more than this?" Without waiting for a response, he continued to say, "Chinyu, the truth is that what you see is only the surface. The reason I was able to easily bring you out of the trap today is because the Buddhist nation's sovereign, nether domain master, and even myself are not our true bodies. The supreme beings of the world have transcended the great terror of death and can shine as brightly as the sun and moon of the world. We all wish to take a step further to surpass the tribulation and mortal level and understand the essence of the great Tao. Because of this, all the supreme beings of the world, besides the previous great Shu emperors, have fused their bodies into the world in an attempt to perceive the source of the great Tao. Cultivating an avatar is extremely difficult. Once it is damaged, it will even implicate the main body, forcing one's cultivation to stop or even regress. This is one of the reasons why the Buddhist nation's sovereign and nether domain master gave up so easily today. On the bed, Qin Yu's eyes turned. Even in his current state, he could still hear these highest-level secrets of the world. Solitary Westgate lifted a hand. But there's a second reason, and it is also the most important one. Nine Heaven Empyrean Palace Master Shun Yuanin doesn't want to kill you. Qin Yu turned his head, waiting for his next explanation. The concept of samsara does exist, but I have never heard of Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace's inheritance mentioning this aspect. Moreover, I cultivate a supernatural power that can sense the soul aura. Nine Heaven Empyrean Palace Master isn't as cold and heartless as she seems after injuring you. Qin Yu's eyes suddenly lit up. Arena Master Shimon's meaning is Solitary Westgate shook his head. I cannot confirm or guarantee anything, but I have some information that might be able to help you. The supreme inheritance of Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace is called the Supreme Lost Emotion Incantation. This cultivation method has extremely high requirements for talent, and after cultivating it, one's power is terrifying. However, it had a huge drawback. Those who cultivated the supreme emotion forgetting technique would gradually lose their emotions and become cold and apathetic. Moreover, once you've cultivated it to the large success stage, you absolutely cannot have any more feelings. Otherwise, you will suffer a backlash from the cultivation method, and your soul will wither and die. Qin Yu almost instantly thought of the greatest possibility. Shun Yuanin was Ning Ling, but because she had reached large success in the sublime lost emotion code, she didn't dare to recognize him. But that sword that pierced through his heart not too long ago, he looked up and asked what he was puzzled about. When Ning Ling had shattered that ice sword, he had felt a thick, killing intent. Solitary Westgate slowly said, "It is rumored that when the supreme emotion forgetting technique reaches large success, a second consciousness will appear within the cultivator's body. Once there is a backlash, the second consciousness condensed from the cultivation method will have a chance of taking over control of the mortal body." Qin Yu closed his eyes. He could almost confirm that this was the truth of the matter. Otherwise, after Ning Ling shattered that ice sword, there was a chance she would have caused even greater wounds to him. As he thought of how she might be withstanding a tremendous torment right now, Qin Yu wished he could immediately appear by her side. His breathing quickened. Solitary Westgate seemed to guess his thoughts. He earnestly said, "Qin Yu, it is best if you don't approach Shun Yuanin right now. This won't be beneficial to either of you." Qin Yu's surging thoughts paused for a moment before receding like a falling tide. He opened his eyes and said, "Thank you for the reminder, Arena Master Shimon. I understand." Solitary Westgate smiled. "Since you understand, then you should properly recover from your wounds. If there is anything else, we can talk about it after your wounds are healed." Outside G City, the demonic path's holy sovereign had been besieged. Because of this, the immortal sect's three masters had gathered together. It was impossible to cover up this sort of explosive news. In the shortest period of time, it spread throughout the entire land of divinity and demons. As long as a cultivator heard this, regardless of their background or status, their complexions changed. Countless influences entered a state of emergency. They summoned back their cultivators overnight, doing their best to appear harmless. It was impossible for such an important matter to be easily revealed. The peaceful coexistence of the immortal and demonic paths was bound to be broken. As the only two transcendent influences in the land of divinity and demons, there were existences that stood above all others. Their confrontation would have an incomparably profound impact on the entire world. The next day, the demonic path officially announced that they had entered a state of war with the immortal sect. 2 hours after this news was released, within the borders of the Great Han Empire, an immortal sect was annihilated. Over 3,000 cultivators from that sect had died without a single survivor. 6 hours later, 27 immortal sect spies within the borders of the Great Qin Empire were uprooted. Because of this, over 10,000 people were implicated. In the 12th hour, 63 minds that the immortal sect directly or indirectly controlled were completely destroyed by the demonic path. The immortal sect didn't show any weakness. When their first subsidiary sect was exterminated, they launched their retaliation against the demonic path. For a time, both sides fought back and forth. Every decision was followed by countless heads soaring into the skies and blood sprinkling onto the earth. The aura of war descended without warning. Like a thick black cloud, it enveloped everyone. Four Seasons City's Dao Arena. After Qin Yu was able to move freely, he immediately went to find Solitary Westgate. The first thing he said was, "Fellow Taoist Westgate, do you know of any method to counteract the backlash of the sublime lost emotion code?" Solitary Westgate gestured with a hand. After Qin Yu sat down, he said, "Qin Yu, I've been looking through the ancient texts these past days, and I've had some harvests." He poured a cup of tea and placed it in front of Qin Yu. Solitary Westgate continued to say, "The sublime lost emotion code walks the extreme road, severing all emotions and desires in exchange for a pure and powerful mind. Through this, one can obtain a formidable strength. But in the end, when one cultivates to this step, what they walk is the road of rules. Frankly speaking, the backlash strength of the sublime lost emotion code is a backlash of rules. If there is enough external strength that can counteract the backlash of rules, then Shen Yuanin will be safe." Qin Yu found the crux of the matter. What is enough external strength? Solitary Westgate said in a low voice, "Above Calamity Immortal is the source of the Great Tao. This level should be called the Great Tao Realm. If you can reach the Great Tao, then you can help Shen Yuanin release the shackles of the sublime lost emotion code. At that time, his wife and child would truly be able to return from the dead. In this world, there is no such thing as giving without reason. If Solitary Westgate went to such great lengths to help Qin Yu, then he naturally had a request. This bit of selfishness was natural. Great Tao Realm, Great Tao Realm. Qin Yu's eyes grew increasingly bright. But this time, his body trembled and all the blood drained from his face. His field of vision darkened, and his consciousness fell into darkness. It was like he had experienced a long, long nightmare. When Qin Yu regained consciousness, he could still feel the coldness and terror of the dream. He tried to stand up, but just as he moved, Qin Yu stuffily coughed and nearly fainted once more. Solitary Westgate's voice sounded out. At first it was illusory and far away, but as time passed, it gradually became clear. "The netherworld lotus in your soul has already bloomed. I'm beginning to wonder whether or not my initial judgment was wrong." The Tao Arena Master had a complex expression. "She really does want to kill you." Qin Yu's lips moved. "That isn't her." Solitary Westgate shook his head. "Qin Yu, listen to me carefully. I have already informed the demonic path to come and pick you up. After you return to the demonic path's Holy Land Small World, immediately mobilize the strength of the Holy Emperor Palace and try to pull out the Netherworld Lotus. Otherwise, you really will die. The demonic path cultivators arrived faster than Qin Yu imagined. 6 elders from the Holy Emperor Palace, Blue Sky Yellow Springs, an eternal darkness demonic region, used ultra-long distance transmission arrays to directly arrive at Four Season City. The 6 great elders could even put up a fight against the supremes of the world. The Tao Arena Master didn't appear. When the demonic path troops left in a hurry, he walked out from nothingness with a worried expression. The Netherworld Lotus was 9 Heaven Mirror Moon Palace's most terrifying supernatural power. Once one touched it, they would die. Even he didn't dare to touch it. Qin Yu, you cannot die. After returning to the demonic path Holy Land Small World, Qin Yu directly moved into the Holy Emperor Palace. He dismissed everyone and immediately went into seclusion. Although he didn't know what the Netherworld Lotus was, Qin Yu naturally wouldn't underestimate it if it could cause the Tao Arena Master to be so worried. But reality proved that he had underestimated just how terrifying the Netherworld Lotus was. The Holy Emperor Palace was known as the #1 supreme treasure in the world, and its might was unparalleled. By borrowing its strength, it was more than enough to destroy the Netherworld Lotus. But this blooming Netherworld Lotus had already fused together with his soul. Destroying it also meant the death of Qin Yu's soul. This was an unsolvable problem. Qin Yu tried all sorts of methods to separate the Netherworld Lotus, but all of them ended in failure. A month later, he had no choice but to leave seclusion. The safety of the demonic path's holy sovereign concerned the entire demonic path. There was naturally no way to conceal Qin Yu's injuries. The high-level cultivators of the demonic path soon learned that Qin Yu had been struck by the Netherworld Lotus. After confirming this over and over again, the high-level figures of the demonic path were left in an uproar. As the mortal enemies of the immortal sect, they were well aware of just how terrifying the Netherworld Lotus was. Once a soul was implanted within, once the flower bloomed, there would be no chance of survival. Perhaps some people were still dissatisfied with Qin Yu, but since he was now the Holy Sovereign, he represented the dignity of the entire demonic path. If he died, the entire demonic path would be shamed. On one hand, the countless tentacles of the entire demonic path system were activated, all of them searching for a way to save the Holy Sovereign. On the other hand, the demonic path's originally reserved offensive strategy was completely overturned. They launched an unprecedented slaughter with the immortal sect. Some small countries controlled by both sides had already started a war. The degree of terror reached a point where over 1 million people died in a single day. Chapter 6:18. Qin Yu sat in the grand hall, coughing from time to time. His face was abnormally red. Yu Qi nervously looked at him, her beautiful eyes filled with anxiety and panic. She couldn't imagine what would happen to her if Qin Yu died. Perhaps she would go crazy. Some feelings were like seeds that were sealed in dust. If there was no chance, they would never germinate. But when Yu Qi entered the sealed Holy Emperor Palace in the past, she had to withstand endless fear and suppression. In her most desperate moment, Qin Yu had appeared in front of her, and he had been so bright and resplendent. As the demonic path's saint's son, his status was incomparably revered. Like this, the seed buried in her heart quietly sprouted. In normal situations, Yu Qi wouldn't reveal this, because she was well aware of Qin Yu's feelings towards Ningling. But her experiences in the immortal sect world had caused her to let go of all shackles. She hoped that she could hold this man in her arms and heal the wounds he suffered. Sensing Yu Qi's gaze, Qin Yu turned around and smiled. "Don't worry, nothing will happen to me." Yu Qi nodded, suppressing the sourness in her eyes. "I know, Your Majesty, you can rest in peace and recover. Everything will be fine." She had already investigated countless times about the Netherworld Lotus. She knew what this meant, but she was still willing to believe in miracles. This was because for Qin Yu to reach this point was a legend in itself. He would definitely be able to live on. But the reality was that even with the suppression of the Holy Emperor Palace, the Netherworld Lotus was still constantly absorbing soul strength to grow. Moreover, as it grew, it became increasingly strong and the speed at which it absorbed soul strength increased. Qin knew that he had to respond as soon as possible. The longer he delayed, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. Finally, after gathering the wisdom of the entire demonic path, they found a solution. The demon envoy placed the stone statue on the table. It was a palm-sized abyssal with crimson eyes and two long fangs sticking out of its mouth. "Your Majesty, this abyssal statue comes from the demon world. Sealed within is the soul mark left behind by a powerful abyssal that died. If you refine this abyssal statue and borrow this abyssal soul mark, you might be able to suppress the netherworld lotus. But there are great hidden dangers in this method. The abyssal soul mark has a formidable invasion and backlash attribute. Once you refine it, it will appear on your soul. At that time, you will be seized by the abyssal soul mark. If you cannot resist it." He didn't finish his sentence, but his meaning was clear. Qin nodded. "I understand. Prepare the ceremony. I will refine this stone statue." The demon attendant took a deep breath. "Your Majesty, I wish you all the best." Although there were risks, it was impossible for him to stop them. This was the only way for Qin to survive. Qin took out a travel jade slip and transmitted the countermeasures the demonic path had come up with to the Dao Arena Master. Solitary Westgate quickly responded. "This method might work, but the demon mark is extremely terrifying. If one doesn't have a firm will, it will be difficult to escape the fate of being possessed." Qin replied, "I have no other choice, but I believe that I can do it." Knowing that His Majesty the Saint's sovereign's condition wasn't good, the demonic path began to rapidly work. The ritual needed to refine the stone statue was completed in the shortest possible time. 2 days later, the testing ceremony continued as normal. Qin stepped into the array diagram that was covered in blood. Zhang Xian sat down cross-legged, and the demon statue floated up on its own. The formation had been activated, and the temperature of the blood that he infused into it began to rise. The smell of blood suddenly increased between his nose and mouth. Strands of blood mist rose up and were quickly absorbed by the demon statue. The eyes of the stone statue became redder and redder, turning into a glaring blood-red color as if they were about to flow out. Hum! Hum! A light tremble spread out. Cracks appeared on the surface of the stone statue. With a sharp howl, it loudly exploded into pieces. In the next moment, a blood-red light flew out, sinking into the point between Qin Yu's eyebrows. Within his soul space, Qin Yu's soul fiercely opened its eyes. His face twitched in pain. Between his eyebrows, his soul seemed to be corroded. It caved in, forming the clear face of a demon. It opened its mouth as if it were wildly laughing, celebrating that it had regained its freedom and obtained such a wonderful soul. The backlash of the demon mark immediately erupted. Within the array diagram, Qin roared out loud like a wounded beast. All the blood in his body flowed backwards. His heart wildly beat at an extreme speed, as if it would explode at any moment. Beneath his neck, blue veins stuck out. Qin thrust his hands into the array diagram. With a deep roar, countless cracks rapidly spread outwards. After a long time, Qin let out a long breath. His tense body relaxed, and his robes were soaked with sweat. In this short period of time, it was like he had experienced a mountain of blades and a sea of fire. He finally understood just how terrifying the demon mark was. Just now, his mind had been bombarded by tempestuous waves. Every time, it was difficult for him to resist. Even the slightest bit of relaxation would have caused him to completely collapse. He closed his eyes. After a long time, he opened them again. His eyes were filled with exhaustion, but there was joy in their depths. The growth of the nether lotus was being suppressed. After resting for a while more, Qin stood up and left the chamber. The demon attendant and the others outside were overjoyed after sensing it. "Congratulations on successfully refining it, Your Majesty," Qin directly said. "The backlash of the demon mark is extremely terrifying. I don't know how long I can last, but no matter what, I must thank you all. Now I have a question. How long do I need to persevere before I can fuse the demon imprint with the nether lotus? That's right. The ultimate result of this plan was for Qin Yu to absorb both at the same time. If he could really do it, then the calamity before him would become a great fortune. The demon envoy's face stiffened. After several breaths of silence, he said, "Your Majesty, you will need to persist for at least 10 years. For tribulation transcenders, 10 years was nothing more than a snap of the fingers. But during these 10 years, he could suffer a backlash from the fiend mark at any time. Since ancient times, the demonic path had obtained far more than just a single demon mark. To a certain degree, the so-called demon mark was a seed that contained the strength of a formidable demon soul. When a new soul was injected into it, the demon mark would be activated and it would seize the consciousness of the soul's original owner, finally obtaining a new life. But from another perspective, the demon mark was also a great supplement. As long as one could refine and absorb it, they could take it for their own use. In the history of the demonic path, there had been more than one or two formidable characters that had attempted to refine the demon mark, but in the end they had all failed. In the ancient texts of the demonic path, there were detailed records of the demon mark. As the soul fusion increased, the strength of the backlash would also become stronger until it replaced the original owner's consciousness. Qin Yu slowly nodded. Billowing heat surged in his chest. He still had to reach the great Tao realm. Of course, he had to survive. The second demon mark backlash occurred on the 10th day after he refined it. The third time was on the 21st day. The fourth time was on the 30th day. The fifth time was on the 42nd day. Each backlash was stronger than the last. Qin Yu forcefully withstood it. He carefully calculated in his mind and finally obtained an approximate pattern. Every 10 days or so, the demon mark would erupt with a backlash. During this period of time, there wouldn't be too many problems. As long as he was careful, he could carry out his plan. Qin Yu didn't plan on staying in the demonic path's holy land for these 10 years. Only in a difficult environment, experiencing pursuit and slaughter, would he be able to temper his will and face the increasingly powerful backlash of the demon mark. The demon envoy hurried over, sweat dripping down his forehead. He had an anxious expression. "Your Majesty, what is the matter?" Qin Yu shook his head. "I'm fine." He paused for a moment and then said, "During this period of time, I'll have to trouble you with some matters." The demon envoy was startled. He could feel the warmth in Qin Yu's words. His lips moved, but in the end he shook his head. "Sharing your Majesty's worries is my duty." Qin Yu smiled. "The reason I called you here today is because I will be leaving the demonic path for some time." The demon envoy's complexion changed. "Your Majesty, you mustn't. The land of divinity and demons is in turmoil right now, and your Majesty has yet to restore your strength. It is not wise for you to take risks." After refining the demon mark and sealing away the nether lotus, Qin Yu's soul also had a majority of its strength imprisoned. Qin Yu shook his head. "I've already figured out the pattern of the demon mark's backlash. As long as I am careful, there won't be any problems." Seeing the demon envoy about to speak again, Qin Yu waved his hand to interrupt him. "Enough. I understand your intentions, but I haven't even been able to last half a year. Although I'm fine right now, the backlash is becoming increasingly strong. Only by constantly tempering my will can I withstand it." The demon envoy's complexion was cloudy and uncertain. "Your Majesty already has a plan?" Qin Yu said, "Yes. I am preparing to personally pursue the 4 people who laid down the immortal executing sword array outside G City." The demon envoy subconsciously wanted to refuse. Woodchopper Fu and the other 3 old ghosts had committed all sorts of atrocities in order to survive for so many years. For them to live until now, they were all incomparably strong. Qin Yu's soul force had been greatly reduced. Because of this, his connection with the Holy Emperor Palace had become intermittent. It would be extremely dangerous to pursue them. But the premise of doing this was to temper his will in the midst of dangerous slaughter. If there was no danger, then there was no meaning to it. "Your Majesty, I only have a single condition. Have Yu Qi go with you." The next day, a remote transmission gate opened. 2 demonic path cultivators, one tall and one short, stepped in and vanished from sight. This sort of small transmission gate was used hundreds to thousands of times a day in the entire demonic path's holy land. No one knew that from this day onwards, the rumor that the demonic path's holy sovereign, who was severely wounded and struggling on the verge of death, had quietly entered the land of divinity and demons. Amidst the turmoil and chaos, he had begun a long and difficult hunt. His first target was Fanbuyu, Wei Empire, subordinate Jade Cloud Kingdom, in the great eastern city of Vast Sunday. Within the city lord mansion, there was a taciturn old steward. He had served 3 generations of the city lord, thus he was highly trusted and had an extremely high status in the mansion. This old steward was a kind and amiable person. He didn't covet wealth or power, and he greeted everyone with a smile. His only flaw was that he was lustful. Even at his old age, he was still incomparably interested in women. Every year, he would take in several beautiful concubines. Not just that, but this old steward was like a treasured saber that never grew old. He gave birth to children one after another, but it was unknown whether it was because he was too old or because these children were born with congenital deficiencies, but none of them were able to stand up. Most of them died before they were 3 years old. Some people felt pity for them, and some people gloated over their misfortune. On this day, a young couple arrived outside Vast Sun City. The man wore blue and white robes, and his face was young. Beneath his hat, there was a bit of frost in his hair. The woman beside him wore a veil that covered her face. Even so, one could still clearly feel the elegance that flowed out from her. Standing outside the city, the woman turned and looked up, her questioning eyes falling on his face. Chapter 619. Clear Yang's city lord's surname was Su. His father and older brother had died one after the other in the early years. Without much effort, he inherited the position of city lord. Without any pressure, he began to indulge in enjoyment. He had many wives and many children. Many people felt that the gentle and amiable old butler had become like this because of the city lord's influence. Without the city lord's father's luck, many of the younger generation of the Su family who had the qualifications to covet the position would fight openly and covertly, hoping that all their opponents would die. Every year, there would be a few disturbances, and small conflicts could be found everywhere. The elders in the mansion were already used to it. The old steward clasped his hands behind his back as he walked along the stone path in the garden. A group of young masters and ladies of the Su family stood opposite him, the atmosphere tense. Seeing him come over, a 13 or 14-year-old girl ran out from the side of the team. She had a sweet appearance and pouted her small lips. Grandpa Steward, 23rd brother, and the others are bullying me again. You have seen it for yourself today. You must give me justice. Everyone was aware of the old steward's status in the manor. The younger generation of the Su family fawned over him. The old steward smiled. Be obedient. Grandpa has important matters to attend to. I don't have time to play around with you. Hurry back to the courtyard. The girl hugged her arm and wriggled back and forth like a spoiled child. No, no, no. You have to say something for me this time. The old housekeeper sighed helplessly. With a gentle expression, he raised his hand and stroked her head. I've already said that I have serious matters to attend to. Why are you so disobedient? Puff, like a ripe watermelon, his head was smashed to pieces and red and white matter splattered everywhere. The old steward walked to the side of a Su family junior that had been scared silly. He wiped the blood off his hands and patted his shoulder. Be obedient and leave. He turned around and continued to walk out. Screams of terror rang out behind him. Amidst the chaos, the old steward walked out of the main gate of the city lord's residence. Looking at the end of the long street where people were coming and going, he muttered, Isn't it good for everyone to be quiet? A man and a woman appeared at the end of his line of sight. The old butler frowned. This man seemed somewhat familiar. The woman stopped, turned around, and retreated to some unknown place. The man came alone. His steps weren't fast, but he arrived in front of her in a few breaths of time. Fanbuyu. It was a straightforward statement, with no intention of questioning. The old butler raised an eyebrow. I haven't heard this name in a long time. Actually, I have many things to say. Not speaking is just one of them. Thus, this is merely a method that this old man uses to conceal his identity. His lips curved up in a smile. I don't know who you are, nor do I have any interest in knowing. That's because those who have found me over the years have all died. Really? The man adjusted his hat and raised his head to reveal his face. I'm looking forward to it. Fan Buyu's pupils shrank. Demon Emperor. With a strange cry, he turned around and left. He did not have the courage to fight at all. What kind of bullsh asterisk T injury is that? What a bunch of F asterisk king liars. Even if the Demon Emperor was really injured, Fan Buyu had no doubt that the Demon Emperor had the absolute strength to kill him. Dong! The void rumbled and the air rippled. Fan Buyu's vision darkened, as if he had run into a mountain. Space-time lock. This was a great treasure of the demonic path's holy Emperor Palace. It was rumored that it came from an unknown land. After activating it, it could seal off a small world. Or, to be more precise, it could instantly duplicate an identical world. Unless the person who activated the space-time lock was killed, one would never be able to leave this place. Space ripples spread out in all directions. All the pedestrians on the streets shattered like bubbles. In the blink of an eye, the entire city was left with only Qin Yu and Fan Buyu. The space-time lock had duplicated the entire vast Yang city. Demon Emperor, I admit that I shouldn't have been possessed and arranged a trap to kill you outside G City. I can give you sufficient compensation, Fan Buyu said in a deep voice. Qin Yu shook his head. You and I both know that such words are meaningless. Why waste time? He paused for a moment, then continued. But I can tell you that the rumors that I'm seriously injured are true. Otherwise, if I wanted to kill you, I wouldn't need to use the space-time lock. Fan Buyu's eyes brightened. His intuition told him that Qin Yu wasn't lying, and there was no need for him to lie to him. Since the Demon Emperor hasn't recovered from his injuries, why did you come looking for me? Qin Yu said in an indifferent tone. When I encounter a difficult situation, I might be able to overcome it by sharpening myself. You are the first whetstone that I've chosen. Fan Buyu roared. If that's the case, then I'll have to offend you. If I'm lucky enough to kill the Demon Emperor, I'll be eternally grateful. With the severely injured Demon Emperor, he might still have a chance. If he could succeed, he would be able to obtain the sacrificial item needed to complete the ritual, and all of it would belong to him alone. This almost meant that he would definitely be able to break through the shackles and transcend life and death. With a step forward, Fan Buyu's aura changed dramatically. There was no longer any trace of fear or uneasiness. Instead, his eyes were filled with a fanatical gleam. They had struggled to survive until today. It wasn't wrong to say that they were as timid as mice, afraid to face death. But at the same time, in order to survive, Fan Buyu and the others had also paid a great price. This tenacity and perseverance, after a long period of time, had even surpassed the fear of death, turning into a powerful obsession. And today, this obsession of Fan Buyu's had been completely activated by Qin Yu. A strange black lotus flower appeared. Its petals opened one by one, revealing the scarlet stamens within. They were as delicate as the waists of beautiful women. But if one looked carefully, they would discover that each stamen had a twisted face on it. They were howling in pain, but no sound came out, as if they were imprisoned in a prison. When they saw Fan Buyu, their faces were filled with fear, but their eyes were filled with hatred. I have lived for 60 million years. I have witnessed the changes of time, the rise of countless proud sons of heaven, and the fall of thousands of peerless masters. Wandering through the endless river of time, I have captured these people and used them as my source of life to continue living. I hope that after today, Your Majesty the Demon Emperor will be able to enter and become the core of my source of life. Now, I ask that the fellow Taoist, I am most grateful to extend the most sincere invitation to the Demon Emperor. With a flick of his sleeves, the black lotus flower gently trembled. The soft stamens inside began to wriggle as if they were alive. Those pained faces opened their mouths and began to howl in unison. This painful howl still didn't emit any sound, but it set off raging waves in Chinyu's mind. It was like someone had picked up a dozen rough wooden nails and ruthlessly smashed them into his head. The instant pain was enough to cause his consciousness to collapse. At the same time, Fan Buyu approached Chinyu. He lifted a hand and slammed it down. Chinyu's complexion paled and his eyes darkened. But in the next moment, they brightened like two masses of blazing flames. He was truly worthy of being called one of the longest living people in the world. His methods were truly unfathomable. At the very least, this soul attack technique was terrifying enough. Chapter 620. Bang! Space twisted. Ripples spread outwards. The world, replicated by the space-time lock, turned into a piece of paper that was bent. The streets, houses, and trees on the paper were like bubbles that had been poked, bursting apart and dissipating. Chinyu was at the center of these fluctuations. The power that distorted space crazily tore at his body. The heart in his chest was crazily beating, causing his blood to quickly rise in temperature. His body surged with extreme speed, rumbling like a great river flowing east, completely activating the power of his flesh. His bones emitted explosive crackling sounds. Chinyu's body suddenly grew. Blood vessels bulged beneath his skin, and his aura skyrocketed. Holy! Strictly speaking, the demon body had already surpassed the limits of body transformation. It had tempered the mortal body into an incomparably powerful treasure. This treasure could communicate with the outside world, becoming one with the world. Every movement it made could move the rules of the world and erupt with a terrifying strength. In order to seal away the demon mark, Chinyu's soul had been damaged and his strength had been greatly reduced. The reason he dared to chase down Fan Buyu and the others was because the demon body was his greatest reliance. Otherwise, this wouldn't be tempering himself, but seeking death. Alive, this was an old monster that lived for tens of millions of years. No matter what trump card he used, if he wasn't careful, he would suffer a backlash. One, he punched out. The world thundered. Endless strength gushed out from the void, gathering into his fist and erupting in an instant. Fan Buyu's expression was solemn, no joy or sorrow in his eyes, because he feared death and had an obsession in his heart. In this great life or death danger, he was able to erupt with everything he had. At this time, his mind, his eyes, and even his senses, all of them were focused on Chinyu. There was no room for anything else. Everything he did, there was only one goal: to kill Chinyu. The vast strength of the world rushed towards him. Fan Buyu's palm trembled, and the bones in half his body emitted cracking sounds. But these sounds didn't mean that the bones in his body couldn't withstand the strength. Rather, they were transforming, accumulating, erupting. Fan Buyu roared out loud. His palm suddenly swelled up, and the skin on it cracked apart. Traces of blood appeared as it was instantly shattered into a fog of blood. Chinyu frowned. He took back his fist and crossed his arm in front of him. At this moment, he seemed to turn into a towering mountain. Dong! A deep sound penetrated into the depths of the soul. A terrifying strength tumbled outwards, spreading outwards at an astonishing speed. Blink in the blink of an eye, half of Clear Sun City, which was replicated by the space-time lock, was crushed and smashed into pieces. Countless layers of space folded. Chinyu flew backwards, his body piercing through the city. His face was pale, and he violently coughed. Scarlet blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, dripping onto the ground before shattering into countless pieces. The wind brought with it the smell of blood. Fan Buyu closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He muttered, "Your Majesty, are you really injured?" Cough, cough. Chinyu took several deep breaths. "Since I said it, it is naturally true." Speechless nodded. "Your Majesty has gained credibility in this old man's heart." Thank you very much for bringing me this news. Qin Yu shook his head. I won't be killed so easily. Fan Buyu smiled. The purpose of a whetstone is to make a blade sharper, but if it's too hard, it can also break a blade. I am untalented, but today I am willing to make a vow to the heavens and earth to become such a stone to end His Majesty the demon sovereign's vitality and extend my life. He raised his hands, his 10 fingers spread open as if he were embracing the entire world. Deep and low syllables echoed out from his mouth. Soul prisoners, offer His Majesty the demon sovereign's soul to me, and you will obtain your freedom. This is my promise to you. Within the black lotus flower, the faces that formed the delicate stamens of the flower widened their eyes, filled with a desire for freedom and liberation. Bang! Black! The black lotus flower exploded. Countless masses of black energy flew out, each one a soul imprisoned within. They howled as they stubbornly stared at Qin Yu. Fan's speechless promise to them was a kind of contract. Once it appeared in the world, it could no longer be changed. This was their only chance to escape the purgatory and welcome their final rest. For this, these soul prisoners would do anything. Masses of black energy exploded, interweaving together to form a giant curtain of darkness that covered the sky above. It was as if the world had fallen into eternal darkness. Fan Buyu straightened his back, and a powerful aura broke out from his body. At this moment, there was no longer any old and decaying aura around him. He was like a spear pointing towards the heavens, overbearing, powerful, and courageous. Exploding the black lotus, releasing all the soul prisoners, cutting off any chance of survival. Placing himself in a hopeless situation, he could no longer turn back. To some extent, this was a game of killing himself first and then killing others. Victory would defy the heavens and change fate. Defeat would mean death. Dang! However, Fan Buyu's decisiveness was because he didn't want to delay for too long in order to avoid complications. Indeed, the demon sovereign's injury was real. This was the best opportunity for him to act without hesitation. Black. The world beneath the curtain was completely isolated from the outside world. A cold and despairing aura submerged Qin Yu. He could feel his soul weakening and withering like a flower in the winter, closer and closer to death. He could hear the laughter of the demon mark in his ears. It was waiting for Qin Yu's consciousness to collapse and his soul to die. At that time, it could break free and use his mortal body as a breeding ground to be reborn. Qin Yu wasn't unfamiliar with the taste of death, but every time he approached it, there would be a different taste. He closed his eyes and his lips moved. I won't die. I won't die. This was a psychological suggestion he gave himself, and also the strongest declaration he could make to the world. Clearyong City, outside the City Lord Mansion, the streets were filled with people, none of them aware that a peak battle was occurring right beside them. If the fluctuations of this battle leaked out, it would be enough to cause the entire city and all living beings to face a calamity. Yu Qi stood behind the canvas, her fingers tightly twisted together. In her line of sight, Qin Yu's figure had already vanished for 10 breaths of time. The flow of time in this world was different from the outside world. If Qin Yu's judgment wasn't wrong, then the battle would end in 15 breaths of time. Otherwise, according to the agreement, she would have to immediately leave Clearyong City. 1 breath, 12 breaths, 13 breaths. Yu Qi's face rapidly paled beneath her veil. Her eyes filled with anxiety. Qin Yu, hurry up and come out. You can do it. You can definitely do it. 14 breaths. 15 breaths. No, a miracle occurred. The Qin Yu who had vanished from the streets didn't emerge from nothingness. Yu Qi's legs weakened. She grabbed onto the canvas to prevent herself from falling. She covered her mouth, tears blurring her vision. Miss, are you all right? The stall owner had already noticed this beautiful woman. He hurriedly stood up, his face full of concern. At the same time, an inexplicable anger rose in his heart. Just what sort of person could cause such a beautiful woman to be so sad? This person had gone too far. Yu Qi blankly shook her head. She turned and walked away, But after taking a single step, she couldn't move any further. She suddenly realized that if Qin Yu couldn't return, why would she leave? She had already prepared herself to live and die with him. She turned and walked towards the City Lord mansion. The so-called live and die together was naturally to live together and die together. Stand in the place where Qin Yu vanished. Yuqi took a deep breath. Her eyes were deathly still, like an ice flower without the least bit of life. At this moment, the world in front of her suddenly trembled, and the scene overlapped. A figure walked out from the overlapping images and stuck close to her. A familiar aura instantly filled her nose and mouth. Yuqi froze for a second and then desperately hugged him. A man's voice sounded out from above her. "I'm sorry. There was a mistake in my calculations. I overestimated myself." Yuqi desperately shook her head. She couldn't care about anything else right now. All she wanted to do was confirm that this man in front of her truly existed. He was alive. He was alive. "I'm afraid I will need to find a place to go into seclusion immediately." Qin Yu's voice became weak. Yuqi fiercely looked up. What she saw was his pale and tired face. She suddenly blamed herself. She was really stupid. She should have thought of this earlier. So how could she have delayed his time? "Let's go now. If you're tired, lean on me and rest." Qin Yu smiled and nodded. He reached out and held on to her, their bodies pressed together. Soon, Yuqi discovered that his arms were gradually loosening and his eyes were closed, falling into a deep sleep. Sniff. Sniffling, Yuqi supported him and they vanished from the streets of Clearyong City. Night. Yuqi looked at the sleeping Qin Yu, her fingers tightly clasped together. She looked at Qin Yu's furrowed eyebrows and didn't dare to close her eyes. The backlash of a demon mark had erupted. She could clearly feel the two consciousnesses struggling within Qin Yu's body. After an unknown period of time, Qin Yu's tense body slowly relaxed. Yuqi let out a long breath and discovered that her clothes were soaked with sweat. Tired, exhaustion washed over her like a tide. After carefully inspecting Qin Yu and determining that there was nothing wrong with him, she fell asleep in several breaths of time. These several hours were no less than the cruelest torture for Yuqi. She watched helplessly as Qin Yu struggled between life and death, unable to do anything. When Qin Yu woke up, the first thing he saw was her thin face. Ever since she learned of his true situation, Yuqi hadn't been able to relax for even a moment. Shame. Guilt rose from the depths of his heart. He looked at the woman in front of him, unsure how he could repay her silent sacrifice. Eyes in a trance, Yuqi's eyelashes moved and her eyes slowly opened. Their gazes met and a brilliant smile bloomed on her face. At this moment, Qin Yu couldn't help but admit that he was moved by this smile. After a moment of hesitation, he took the initiative to grab her hand. "Yuqi, thank you." Looking at her hand that was grabbed by Qin Yu, Yuqi's smile became even brighter. She forcefully grasped his hand, silently telling herself that since she had caught him today, she wouldn't let him go for the rest of her life. At almost the same time, on a distant island in the southern tip of the Great Chu, Old Bastard opened his eyes, his complexion pale. Now he was sure that Fan Buyu's aura had truly vanished. Old Bastard was well aware of what this meant. After a long period of silence, he finally couldn't suppress the tumbling in his chest. He clenched his teeth and roared, "You bastard!" He fiercely stood up and flicked his sleeves. A wild strength erupted, crushing everything in front of him and erasing all traces. Old the ghost head shot into the skies. Space twisted and swallowed up his figure. No one knew that a long, long time ago, Fan Bu had become a path of retreat that he had prepared for himself. But now this path of retreat had been sealed off. If someone could kill Fan Bu, then it wouldn't be difficult to kill him. Thus, his current path of retreat wasn't a path filled with anger and rage, but a path towards the west. Him. Chapter 621. The territory of the Chu country was vast and boundless. In the extreme west of the country was the boundless ocean, and there were many islands scattered all over the place. There were a few islands that were connected to each other head to tail, looking like a carp. Hence, they were called the Carp Islands. In the middle of the archipelago, roughly at the place where the carp's eyes were, there was a small island that was a few kilometers in circumference. But surprisingly, this small island was actually covered in a forest of tall mountains. A few tens of mountains were densely piled together, and they charged desperately towards the sky, causing one to be unable to help but have the feeling that this small island would be overturned from the bottom of their hearts. Old Bastard, who was standing under the vines of an ancient tree, was frowning as he looked at the terrifying hole in front of him that led straight to the ground. A stone pillar had drilled out of it and was pointing straight to the heavens. Its rough surface was covered in traces of the passage of time. It was clear that it had existed for a very long time. On the indistinct lines on the stone pillar's surface, strands of blood-colored light extended upward and drilled into the top of the stone pillar. The skeleton was sitting cross-legged, and a layer of bloodline seemed to be interweaving on its deathly white bones. Because of this layer of bloodline, the skeleton gave people the feeling that it was still alive. It was as if it had been exposed to the world for countless years and had endured the attacks of wind and rain for some reason. The amount of divine blood is decreasing, Old Bastard muttered in a low voice. His eyes were cold, and there was a hint of unconcealable fear in the depths of his eyes. Fan Buyu had been killed, and the amount of divine blood continued to decrease. He could feel the smell of death once more, and it was so heavy that it made it hard for him to breathe. He turned around and left. Soon, the natives of the Carp Islands received a reminder from the Lord Priest that the evil god was about to escape. If they wanted to maintain the continuation and inheritance of their race, they had to start a large-scale sacrifice and use the power of their flesh and blood to suppress the evil god. All the tribes on the archipelago instantly lost their cheerful voices. Those who had the qualifications to sacrifice themselves had to be young and strong men and women. They held their children and knelt in front of their parents. After deeply kowtowing, they got up and left with large strides. Their faces were filled with grief and determination. This was something that no one could avoid since ancient times. As long as their parents and children could survive, they did not fear death. One after another, the natives, under the lead of the priests, came to the side of the stone pillar with pious expressions. After paying their respects, they jumped down. The large hole in the ground was like the open mouth of a monster that swallowed all of them, not leaving a single trace behind. Old Bastard coldly looked at everything that was happening. Although the effect of raising was becoming smaller and smaller, it was the only method he had at that moment. If he could kill the fiend emperor outside G-City, he would not have to face such a difficult situation. Damn it! After cursing, Old Bastard turned around and left. The raising still needed some time, so he could not delay any longer. Living was such a wonderful thing that was worth being grateful for. One had to make the most out of every second and not waste even a moment of time. 2 months later, the feeding finally came to an end. At the cost of the lives of millions of natives in various parts of the Carp Islands, the depleting trend of the god's blood finally stabilized. Old Bastard heaved a sigh of relief, but he could not truly relax. He was very clear that this kind of stable state could not be maintained for long. The natives on the island wouldn't be able to carry out a second sacrificial ceremony within 100 years. He had to find other ways to increase the production of god blood during this time. Half a year had passed since Fan Buyu's death, and everything had been calm. Perhaps he had been too cautious. Perhaps it was time for him to return to the land of divinity and demons. A man and a woman walked on the waves of the boundless sea. Wherever they passed, the surface of the water beneath their feet would calm down like a flat mirror. Yuchi held onto his arm, a puzzled look on her face. My demonic path forces have spread all over the world, but we still haven't been able to find any trace of Old Bastard. How did your majesty know that he was hiding here? Chinyu smiled. It was Verbius who sent me a message. Yuchi frowned. Verbius? What influence is that? How come I don't know anything about it? Chinyu explained. Verbius, strictly speaking, isn't a true organization. It is formed by many wandering cultivators, but the requirements to join are extremely high. They accept assassinations, information purchases, and other services. Yuchi wrinkled her nose. Is Your Majesty trying to say that I don't have the qualifications to know anything about Verbius? Qin helplessly shook his head. I really don't. He and Yuchi were extremely cautious. Even the demonic path didn't know of their whereabouts. Yet they were still grasped by Verbius. Verbius was powerful. At least in terms of information, it couldn't be said that it was unparalleled. This information about Old Bastard was Verbius taking the initiative to express a favorable impression of Chinyu. Although they were called Verbius and claimed to be able to take on any job and kill anyone in the world, there were still certain limitations. For instance, the demonic path's holy sovereign. The status represented by this title was something that Verbius absolutely didn't dare to touch. Of course, it was also possible that no one could afford the price to kill the demon sovereign. Between the horizon and the sea, a mountain range appeared at the end of one's line of sight. As one approached, it continued to extend downwards, becoming increasingly thick and solid until several islands appeared on the sea. Yuchi pursed her lips. She softly said, "Is this it?" Chinyu nodded. He turned around and smiled as he stroked her hair. "Don't worry. Just stand here and wait for me to return." With a flick of his sleeves, seawater automatically rose up, forming a ball of water that wrapped around Yuchi. Pa! The ball of water fell into the sea and vanished. Taking a deep breath, Chinyu faced the islands and strode forwards. Faint traces of invisible aura spread out from his body, communicating with the world and touching upon the lines of the rules. Strong winds rose between the heavens and earth. There were no clouds in the skies above, but it gradually darkened, as if all light had been banished. An invisible aura covered the entire archipelago. The monster beasts that ran through the mountains and forests all whimpered and fell to the ground, shivering. In the native tribes, the priests that had stepped onto the road of cultivation widened their eyes, and their complexions rapidly paled. Shwa! In the palace, Old Bastard's eyes shot open, his face filled with anger. There was no need for a reason. His intuition told him that the one who had arrived was the person who had killed Fanbuyu. How did this person know of this place? However, there was no longer any meaning in thinking about this. Old Bastard took a deep breath, a cold light in his eyes. If this were anywhere else, he would have fled without hesitation. But the Carp Islands were his roots. If this place was destroyed, he would die without a doubt. In other words, there was no way to retreat today. He could only fight. He took a deep breath and stood up. Old Bastard took a step forwards and appeared in the skies above the Gourd Islands. His sharp eyes looked towards the horizon. At this time, a white-haired youth was stepping on the waves. His robes fluttered in the wind, and his powerful aura gradually harmonized with the world. "Demon Sovereign!" Old Bastard cried out in alarm. Chinyu lightly said, "My injuries haven't healed yet. I will use you all as whetstones to temper my will and survive this death tribulation." He raised a hand and punched out. The world shook and a wild strength swept out like a raging river. Looking ahead, the sea instantly split apart, forming an abyss. Old Bastard roared, "Demon Sovereign, if you let me go, I am willing to join the demonic path and serve the Holy Emperor Palace." He pressed his hands forward and black fog gushed out from the void, condensing into a thick barrier. Dong! With a dull explosion, the black fog caved in. Then, strength erupted outwards, tearing the fog apart and causing it to tumble away. Old Bastard drew back, his face pale, but his eyes were wide open and bright, filled with wild joy and disbelief. The Demon Sovereign had personally arrived, so he wouldn't be so bored as to joke around with him. Old Bastard also felt a sharp killing intent from this strike. But although this strike was strong, it was far from the level that the Demon Sovereign should have reached. It was true. The Demon Sovereign had indeed been injured. Just like Fan Buyu, Old Bastard instantly firmed his resolve. No matter what price he had to pay, he had to kill the Demon Sovereign today. This was the best chance in their lives to change their destiny. He turned and soared into the skies. Chinyu frowned. He never thought that old bastard would have such a reaction. His feet moved, and he chased after him. In the skies above the Carp Archipelago, two explosive sounds rang out. The sound waves were like the roar of thunder. From the giant hole that had swallowed millions of natives, a suppressed and excited gasp suddenly came from it. At the top of the stone pillar, the skeleton with the bloodline entwined on its surface opened its mouth and emitted a silent howl. Old Bastard's approaching body exploded in midair, turning into a mass of scarlet blood energy that was instantly absorbed by the skeleton. Organs, flesh, and blood, hair. The scene of the skeleton growing back into a living person was completed in several breaths of time. At this time, the one who appeared in front of them was a middle-aged man. His body was tall and strong, and slaughter energy rose from his eyes. He slightly bowed and placed a hand on his chest. Please allow me to formally introduce myself. My name is Wei Zhongyan, a descendant of the Great Wei royal family. Unfortunately, I have lost the face of my ancestors these past years, so I had no choice but to conceal my name. Your Majesty should be the only person in this world that knows of my origins. If I am killed by Your Majesty today, please erect a tombstone for me and leave behind my true name. Of course, if I am lucky enough to kill Your Majesty, I will also collect your corpse. Chinyu nodded. I promise you. Wei Zhongyuan stood up. Your Majesty, I have offended you. He took a step forwards. It was like a million mountains had fallen down. The entire world trembled, emitting deep groans. Kacha! Kacha! Countless space cracks appeared. Then, they twisted and separated from space, condensing into a black saber in Wei Zhongyuan's hand. Shua! The saber cut down. Chinyu stiffened. A numb feeling appeared between his eyebrows and rapidly spread outwards. What a terrifying saber strike. He lifted a hand and grasped forwards. Space shook and countless translucent lines appeared. They were pulled backwards by Chinyu. Then, the phantom of a great bow appeared. The translucent lines released countless motes of light that condensed into an arrow. He released his hand, and the arrow shot out. It was condensed from the killing intent of the world's rules and possessed an absolute attribute that could tear apart all. With a heaven-shaking explosion, terrifying fluctuations smashed into the heaven-pointing stone pillar. Its surface seemed to be covered in traces of corrosion, but the truth was that it was indestructible. It hummed and trembled, releasing a formidable suppressive strength that controlled the fluctuations within a narrow range. Wei Zhongyan looked down at the bloody hole that had appeared in his chest, a look of admiration on his face. The Holy Emperor Palace's demon body cultivation method can temper the mortal body into a treasure that can communicate with the world and directly mobilize the strength of the rules. It is truly terrifying. It seems that I cannot kill Your Majesty with my own strength. He looked up, a crazed look in his calm eyes. Perhaps if I do this, I will no longer be me. I might even lose my dominant position, but I will still live, and I will live forever. In truth, this is enough. In order to live, I am willing to pay any price. Wei Zhongyuan smiled and flew to the top of the stone pillar. He knelt down and pressed his hand down. Many years ago, I discovered you, suppressed you, and absorbed your flesh and blood to survive. I know that you hate me to the bone, but this is our best chance. You can regain your freedom, and I can live on. We can each take what we need. If you are willing, release your strength and become one with me. As his voice faded, countless cracks appeared on the stone pillar below in the blink of an eye. For tens of millions of years, the natives had raised them countless times, maintaining the production of god blood. At the same time, this blood had permeated into the mighty stone pillar. As the master of the native bloodline, he could control their life and death with a single thought. He could naturally borrow this bloodline to infiltrate and destroy the stone pillar from the inside. Bang, blood devils shot into the skies. In the blink of an eye, they formed a pillar of clouds that connected to the heavens. A terrifying and suppressive aura erupted from within, causing one's mind to tremble and despair to fill their hearts. With a loud howl, the cracked stone pillar directly exploded into pieces. A blood-stained skeleton flew out from the massive hole in the ground. It floated in midair, soul fires burning in its eye sockets. These flames were pure gold. They were noble and mysterious, as if they could contain all existences in the world. According to ancient legends, there were spiritual gods in the world, and their souls were gold. This was the skeleton of a spiritual god. In order to reverse the limits of the rules and continue a life that should have withered away, one naturally needed to borrow strength that surpassed the rules. And the strength of a spiritual god was more than enough to accomplish this. Even though this was only a divine skeleton that had died countless years ago, it still seemed to retain its incomparably powerful will. The invisible pressure was like a tidal wave that swept out in all directions. Wherever it passed, even the heavens and earth would tremble. The golden divine fire in its eye sockets fell on Wei Zongyuan, as if it were considering something. Suddenly, the golden divine fire rose up. Golden lines appeared on the bloody bone. In the next moment, with these lines as the dividing line, the divine bone broke into countless pieces. The broken divine bone lost all of its might. This was because it had retracted all of its strength into its soul. The golden soul was like a blazing sun. It released a light that made it impossible for one to look directly at it. In a trance, one seemed to be able to see a towering figure within this light, one that supported the heavens and earth, its eyes filled with disdain and disdain. Whoosh! The golden soul flew out. In the blink of an eye, it submerged between Wei Zongyuan's eyebrows and vanished. He closed his eyes. His body gently shivered. After several breaths of time, he opened his eyes once more. His pupils had turned to pale gold. Looking down at his hands, Wei Zongyuan fell silent for several breaths of time. Then he gently sighed. I never thought that there would be a day when I would be resurrected. He looked up, his eyes covering Qinyu. Lowly mortal, the aura on your body actually causes my heart to race. Although I don't know what it is, after today, it will belong to me. Chapter 622. Divine spirits were born from the rules, but also stood above them. With a single thought, they could move the world and overturn the clouds and rain. For gates appeared in the skies above the Carp archipelago. Each gate shined with a golden light and emitted a terrifying pressure. With a deep rumble, the 4 gates slowly closed, isolating this part of the world from the outside world. Qinyu stuffily coughed, and his face paled. His connection with the world's rules had been forcefully interrupted. Wei Zongyuan pointed a finger. Strip away. His indifferent voice didn't rise or fall at all. The world in front of Qinyu instantly turned black and white. They separated from each other and spun at an astonishing speed. A powerful pulling strength erupted from the black and white, wanting to pull Qinyu's consciousness in, crush it, and destroy it. What Wei Zongyuan wanted was the complete Qinyu, including his soul and mortal body. Thus, annihilating his consciousness was the best choice. Only a divine spirit could accomplish this, to penetrate the mortal body and soul and directly attack the consciousness. This was a method on a completely different level. Chasing after Old Bastard had finally drawn out a divine spirit. The degree of danger had instantly risen. To use a divine spirit as a whetstone, this was truly bold to the extreme. In truth, if Qinyu had a choice, he really would have chosen to retreat. Rumble, rumble. The black and white colors spun faster and faster. Like a giant millstone, they emitted a soul-piercing sound. His consciousness trembled and gradually began to scatter. The scene in front of him became blurry and his sense of his body weakened. Qinyu was well aware that if this continued, once his consciousness collapsed, he would die forever, even if his mortal body and soul still existed. I can't panic. I still have a chance. I need to calm my heart and wait for that flame to appear. If I detonate it, I will definitely be able to break through the power of a divine spirit, Turning back time to the day Qin Yu entered Clear Sun City, he was in the world replicated by the space-time lock and was covered by the curtain of darkness created by the soul prisoners. In the cold darkness, the aura of death became increasingly thick. Qin Yu bitterly persisted. After an unknown period of time, a weak flame suddenly appeared in his soul. Qin Yu's consciousness fused into this weak soul flame. In that moment, he felt as if he were the center of the world, an omnipotent divine spirit sitting high above the highest heavens. Thus, he tore open the curtain of darkness and caused Fan Buyu to suffer a backlash and die. Unfortunately, the soul flame only lasted for an extremely short period of time before vanishing. Afterwards, Qin Yu carefully looked through the materials and finally found some information about it. In truth, the so-called flame of the soul had a resounding name in ancient times. It was called the divine flame. When a cultivator stepped onto the road of cultivation, they would cultivate magic power, mortal body, and soul. In truth, these three aspects should be a progressive process. Mana came first, then the corporeal body, and finally the soul. That was why there was a saying in the world that cultivating techniques was easy, but cultivating the soul was the hardest. When a cultivator's power reached a certain limit, their soul would become stronger and stronger, constantly transforming. Eventually, they would ignite the divine fire and refine their own godhood within the divine fire, thereby becoming a god. It was extremely difficult for the soul to give birth to a divine flame. It was impossible at the calamity immortal realm. But ever since Qin Yu had borrowed the strength of the little blue lamp and stepped onto the path of cultivation, he had never relaxed in cultivating his soul. Thus, the strength of his soul was extremely formidable. In addition, an even more important reason was the cosmic sea-cross bell and purple moon in his soul space. They were imperceptibly enhancing the quality of his soul. And not too long ago, when he obtained the ancient Tao inheritance, it caused Qin Yu's soul to undergo a qualitative leap. In fact, the demon mark sealed within his soul even assisted in the birth of soul fire to a certain degree. Thus, when death approached, Qin Yu persisted and struggled, igniting his own potential and igniting the divine flame ahead of time. But his own soul strength wasn't enough to maintain the divine flame burning. So even if it was ignited, it would be extinguished in the blink of an eye. What Qin Yu was waiting for now was the moment the divine flame ignited. This was because in that moment, he would erupt with a strength close to that of a god. But this sort of waiting might not necessarily have a result. The divine flame had appeared once, but there might not be a second time. Even if it did appear, it would only be for a brief moment. If one's consciousness was on the verge of collapse, it would be difficult to grasp that momentary opportunity. Missing it meant death. Wei Zongyuan frowned. This lowly mortal in front of him was actually able to withstand it for so long. This was far beyond his expectations. Moreover, he didn't know why, but he could feel a faint threat. A bit of hesitation flashed in his eyes before it turned into a dense coldness. Wei Zongyuan lifted a hand and thrust out a second finger. Annihilation fluctuations erupted. He gave up the chance to completely obtain this mortal and chose to destroy his soul. In the ancient Tao inheritance, it was unknown whether it was because of secrecy or some other reason, but the ancient had sealed away the cosmic sea-cross bell and purple moon. Even now, their seals still hadn't been opened. Thus, Qin Yu's soul was in a nearly defenseless state. Facing the obliteration of a god, he had no strength to resist. But in truth, there was still a will that, even in a deep slumber, instinctively didn't want Qin Yu's soul to be destroyed. Deep blue water light erupted. It was similar to the power of the Tao of water, but it far surpassed the current level of the Tao of water that Qin Yu possessed. This was because this was also the strength of a god, the divine spark fragment that had fused into Qin Yu's soul and could summon the sea map. Wei Zongyuan's eyes brightened. Divine spark. His Tao was different from that of others. He could plunder and swallow the strength of other gods. It was because of this that he was suppressed by the joint forces of others in the past, and was trapped under the God Seal pillar for tens of millions of years. Now that he had escaped, he seemed unparalleled in his divine might, but the truth was that he was incomparably weak. If he could swallow this formidable divine spark, he could rapidly restore his strength and truly occupy this mortal body. He wouldn't need to worry about a backlash from its original consciousness. Bang! Wei Zongyuan's pale golden eyes suddenly turned blood red. He glared at Qin Yu, or to be more precise, at the divine spark fragment that had fused into his soul. He opened his mouth and emitted sharp howl. The sound vibrated at an astonishing frequency, instantly shattering the world's rules and causing them to reform and regenerate. Thus, a blood-red and withered arm stretched out from nothingness, grasping at the point between Qin Yu's eyebrows. The divine spark fragment seemed to feel an incomparably intense threat. The sound of crashing waves rose up between the heavens and earth. Then, the phantom of a boundless sea wrapped around Qin Yu. The blood-red and withered arm fell onto the sea phantom. It violently trembled for several breaths of time before it squeezed in with difficulty. The divine spark's taste was wonderful. Its 5 fingers shivered in excitement as it slowly but surely moved forward. Shua, the figure of a woman, appeared in the sea. As she looked at the approaching blood-red arm, she began to speak in rhythmic syllables. It was ancient, boundless, and exuded a transcendent dignity, as if she were the ruler of the world, controlling all life in this world. Within the sea phantom, sea beasts appeared one after another. Even though they were only phantoms, they still released a heaven-shaking aura. But as these sea beasts approached the blood-red arm, their bodies were like punctured balloons. They cried out in pain and rapidly shrank before bursting apart. This arm itself wasn't too strong, but it seemed to possess some unimaginable destructive attribute to the power of a spiritual god. It could easily destroy them. The woman in the sea phantom frowned, revealing a thoughtful expression. After several breaths of time, she gently sighed. The mortal she was residing in had grown at a speed that far surpassed her imagination. She really didn't want to help him. But now, if she didn't help him, she would vanish into thin air. The woman turned around and spat out a blue light. It was so pure and transparent that it left one lost in it. The blue light was like a waterfall. It flew between Qin Yu's eyebrows, entering his soul space and fusing into his soul. The birth of the divine flame was established upon a powerful foundation of the soul. This blue light was the same as providing Qin Yu with the spark to ignite the divine flame. Bang! That golden flame that Qin Yu had been waiting for was like a spark falling into a barrel of oil, instantly erupting. He opened his eyes. Golden light burst out, submerging into the void in front of him. He raised a fist and smashed it forwards. Bang! The sea phantom collapsed, vanishing as it tumbled about. The fist collided with the blood-red arm, causing it to emit pained and unwilling screams. Kacha! Kacha! The arm broke into pieces, turning to powder. Wei Zhen drew back several steps, golden divine blood flowing out from the corners of his lips. He frowned, his eyes cold. He lifted his hands, and the rules of the world wildly revolved. A giant python appeared out of thin air, opening its jaws and biting towards him. The irregularly broken divine spark constantly spun, releasing motes of blue light that were absorbed by Qin Yu's soul, allowing the divine flame to continue burning. During this process, Qin Yu's soul was like an iron ingot placed into a furnace. The impurities were burnt to ashes, and the quality of his soul rose at an astonishing speed. In the distant past, there were divine beings that trained their disciples. They would consume their source divine spark in order to help their disciples ignite the divine flame ahead of time. Although this method couldn't directly create a divinity, it could still cause a leap in the quality of the disciple's soul, further consolidating the foundation for igniting the divine flame. Of course, the disciples mentioned here were those chosen by the divine beings. They were absolute direct descendants that would inherit the teachings of the divine beings. Now, Chinyu is the same as enjoying a chance to be trained by the divine beings at all costs, even though she wasn't willing at all. The divine flame burned. In this state, Chinyu possessed strength comparable to that of a divine being. But he was also immortal. The fusion of divine and mortal allowed him to easily destroy the blood-red arm. Otherwise, even if another divine being were to come today, they would likely end up being swallowed up by him. With a punch, the world trembled. The head of the giant python that bit at him exploded. But it seemed as if it hadn't received any substantial damage. Its massive body wrapped around the space where Chinyu was and began to wildly contract. A battle between divine beings could be seen as a competition between the two sides on the level of rules. In this aspect, Chinyu is undoubtedly at a disadvantage. But the combination of divine and mortal could restrain Wei Zongyuan's strength. Both sides had their own advantages, thus they were evenly matched. The python's body was constantly broken and then instantly repaired itself. It wanted to crush apart the protection of the rules around Chinyu, but it was always a little short. Chinyu was willing to wait. After all, as the divine flame burned, his soul was constantly strengthening. Wei Zongyan seemed fine for a while, but besides them, there was one person who couldn't endure it any longer. An icy, cold female voice sounded out in Chinyu's soul space. I don't know if you're pretending to be confused or if you are deliberately delaying for time, but I can clearly tell you that if this continues, this part of my divine spark will collapse. You should be well aware of what the consequences will be. Chinyu took a deep breath. Perhaps these words were exaggerated, but he couldn't take this risk. He lifted a hand and pointed out. Rumble, rumble. In that instant, the winds and clouds changed color. A giant finger appeared in the wind and clouds, falling towards Wei Zongyuan. After the first finger fell, Chinyu pointed out a second time without pause. With this finger, the skies suddenly darkened and the temperature crazily fell. A cold aura seeped into the marrow. Phantom after phantom, human or beast, appeared in the dark skies. In the blink of an eye, the world seemed to turn into a netherworld of ghosts. The second finger was followed by the third. When this finger pointed out, heaven and earth immediately lost color. Endless scrolls appeared, displaying scenes of the great changes of time. Countless creatures were born and died. 3 fingers of the blue point, blue expanse, blue spirit, blue sea. But at this time, Chinyu, who was in a state of burning divine flame, paused for a moment before lifting his hand once more. His movements were extremely slow. Starting from the tip of his finger, it rapidly became transparent, like some sort of crystal that seemed to fuse with the world. The 4th finger, the blue point, blue heaven. The meaning was, a finger asks the blue heaven, who dares to contend with me? The name and meaning appeared in Chinyu's mind as he pointed out his 4th finger. It was like a mark left behind by a branding iron that could no longer be erased. At this moment, Chinyu even had a faint intuition that the 4th finger wasn't the end. There should be an even more terrifying power to come. But it was clear that this wasn't a level that Chinyu could reach right now. Thus, he only remembered it in his heart before suppressing this thought. Wei Zongyuan's complexion changed. He flicked his sleeves, and a golden wheel appeared behind him, releasing 1 trillion beams of golden light. In the next moment, the 4 fingers of the blue point were like 4 arrows that crossed through space and time, smashing into the golden wheel. Rumble, rumble. There was a heaven-shaking explosion. Space instantly shattered, turning into chaos. Every time it tumbled, endless destruction would be released, swallowing up Wei Zongyuan. After several breaths of time, the burning golden divine flame on Chinyu's soul suddenly faded away. He instantly fell from the feeling that he was the center of the world. His heart was filled with disappointment and emptiness. But in the next moment, he couldn't help but smile. The divine spark had taken back its strength. This meant that today's battle had come to an end. Roar! With a roar of despair, the python that was crazily tightening its body suddenly exploded into pieces. Wei Zongyuan walked out from the chaos. His expression was calm. He swept his eyes around, a deep reluctance in them. "Your Majesty, you have won in the end. I really am a person that deserves to die. I was willing to give up my will, but I still couldn't survive. Then I will die here. I only hope that your Majesty can keep our promise and set up a stone tablet for me." Qin Yu nodded. "Since I promised you, I will naturally accomplish it." Wei Zongyuan bowed. "Thank you, your Majesty." In the next moment, his body was annihilated, turning into powder that was blown away by the wind. A golden flame remained where it was. It was like a candle in the autumn wind, flickering as if it would be extinguished at any moment. This was the final remnant soul of that divine spirit. "Keep it. Don't let it scatter," Purple Moon's weak voice sounded out in his mind. Qin Yu's soul ignited the divine flame. As he burned and tempered himself, he also helped her undo the seal. Although he didn't know what Purple Moon's goal was, he still trusted her. After a moment of hesitation, he lifted a hand and grasped it. Shwa! A layer of dark purple moonlight flashed, and the golden flames vanished from sight. After carefully sensing that there was nothing wrong, Qin Yu took a deep breath and smiled. When he killed Wei Zongyuan and encountered a divine spirit, although it was dangerous, the harvests were enormous. His soul had been tempered by the divine flame. In that state where he was the master of the world, his will had been sublimated. Not only that, but he had also inadvertently forced out the sea god's divine spark that had already awakened but remained hidden. Indeed, the risks one took were directly proportional to the harvests. Qin Yu lifted a hand and grasped forwards. The shattered islands and mountain peaks rapidly reformed. A great tomb appeared, and a stone tablet broke through the earth. Qin Yu landed in front of the great tomb and cupped his hands together. The powder on the surface of the stone tablet constantly fell off, and the words Great Way, Imperial Way, Zone rapidly appeared. Since he had agreed to something, he naturally had to do it. Moreover, with Wei Zongyuan's cultivation, no matter what sort of person he was, he deserved the respect he deserved. The second kill had been completed. Qin Yu turned to leave, but he stopped in the next moment. He flew above the Carp Islands, and his deep and low voice echoed through the world. "Starting today, the sacrificial ceremony will end forever. You can all rid yourself of this curse." Countless pale and panic-stricken natives heard this. They were stunned for a moment before they knelt down and kowtowed towards Qin Yu's back. It wasn't that the natives of the Carp Islands had never doubted whether or not the so-called demonic god really existed, but they didn't dare to, nor did they have the means to investigate. They could only sacrifice themselves, generation after generation, in order to exchange for the continuation of their families and tribes. Qin Yu flew out from the islands. With a thought, a ball of water rose up. Yu Qi's face lit up with joy, and she immediately threw herself at him. The 7 great empires of the land of divinity and demons occupied the entire world. But this didn't mean that every place was ruled. For instance, at the border of the Qin, Wei, and Han empires, there was a place called Flowing Abyss. The 3 empires had once tried to incorporate it into their territory, but ultimately gave up because of various accidents. Gradually, Flowing Abyss became a lawless zone. But as time passed, it gradually formed its own system. All sorts of vicious and evil cultivators or desperate cultivators fled from the 3 empires into Flowing Abyss. Thus, the living environment here became incomparably harsh. Of course, there were exceptions. Flowing Abyss had 3 great cities. They were called Seeking Cauldron, Pursuing the Tao, and Seeking Existence. Behind these 3 great cities, there were extremely powerful influences that used bloody methods to maintain order. If anyone dared to cause trouble in these cities, they would be hunted down and their fates would be miserable. But this sort of order only existed within the city walls. Once one stepped out of the city gates, even if blood splashed in front of them, the guards wouldn't bat an eye. On this day, a man and a woman walked in from outside Seeking Cauldron City. Their clothes were clean and tidy, and their steps were neither fast nor slow. Many eyes locked onto their figures in the dark. But no one dared to do anything. The reason was simple. These two people were far too calm. This sort of calm demeanor absolutely couldn't be faked. Chapter 6:23. Just as the man and woman were about to enter the city, there was a loud rumble of horse hooves behind them. Large black-scaled horses carried riders on their backs as they raced forwards. They were as fast as lightning, stirring up dust in their wake. Their momentum was monstrous. Those that were secretly itching to try immediately calmed down. They restrained their auras, not daring to leak any of it out. But soon, their eyes widened as if they had seen a ghost. The young man and woman on the road didn't seem to have any intention of dodging. They maintained their original rhythm as they moved towards the city gates. The sound of hooves behind them was like a thunderclap, carrying with it a wild aura that could tear apart one's heart and lungs. It covered the skies as if it would crush all obstacles in its path. The guards at the city gates had dignified expressions. Some of them couldn't help but curse out loud. "Hurry up and fuck off. Do you want to die?" Pa. The sound of footsteps was light, but it was clearly heard by everyone. A man and a woman had already stepped into the city gates. The complexions of the guards changed. Looking at the roaring black flood, their leader clenched his teeth and roared, "Stop them." As long as one entered the range of the city, they would receive the protection of Ask Tripod City. This was a bottom line that couldn't be changed, and it was also the foundation of the city's existence. As the two sides were about to collide, there was a loud whistle from the black flood. The riders pulled on their reins, and the black-scaled horses stood up, forcefully stopping outside the city gates. The leader of the guards let out a long breath. He hurriedly bowed and stood up, his complexion icy cold. He looked at the young man and woman at the city gates and clenched his teeth. "Leave this place immediately." The eyes of the other side beneath the black robes caused his heart to tremble. He swallowed back the curses he was about to say. It was only when the man and woman vanished from his line of sight that the leader discovered that the clothes beneath his armor were soaked with sweat. The black flood passed through the city gates, heading straight for the central region of Ask Tripod City. There was a black speed car in the group that occasionally flashed with lightning. "Young master, subordinate has already ordered people to follow them. Once they leave the city, they will be captured and dealt with by you," a rider said in a low voice. After a short period of silence, a light voice echoed out from the speed car. "Do it secretly. With his status, this matter couldn't be known by others. Young master, rest assured that subordinate will arrange everything," the rider said confidently. The entire prying cauldron city was filled with their spies. As long as they could lock onto their whereabouts, the two of them wouldn't be able to escape. However, the knight quickly took out the communication jade slip and probed it with his divine sense. Immediately, his expression became extremely ugly. He gritted his teeth, turned around, and saluted. "Young master, we lost those two people, but please rest assured, I will definitely find them." In the black flying car, the young man who was reading a book frowned when he heard this. Then, he regained his calm and gave a soft grunt of acknowledgement. There were countless extraordinary people in the world, and it was nothing to be able to escape surveillance. But this time, why had his father called him back in such a hurry? The flood stopped outside the city lord mansion. The black flying car opened, and a young man in a light blue robe walked out with his head lowered. "Greetings, young master." Walala. Everyone was kneeling on the ground outside the mansion. The blue-robed young man nodded. Just as he was about to step into the mansion, he seemed to sense something and turn around. The silhouettes of a man and a woman stood in the middle of the kneeling crowd, and they were particularly eye-catching. It was them. The young man's pupils shrank. He stepped forwards and cupped his hands together. "I am Wu Yun. Greetings, fellow Taoists. I wonder if there is anything I can help you with?" From beneath the black robe, a light voice sounded out. "The two of us have come to pay our respects to the city lord." Wu Yun said, "Do you two have an appointment?" The black-robed man said no. Wu Yun frowned. "My father is usually extremely busy. If you don't have an appointment, I fear it will be difficult for him to find the time. If you two aren't in a hurry, please follow me into the mansion first. I will help you make arrangements as soon as possible." The black-robed man nodded. All right. Although his attitude was a bit disrespectful, the smile on Wu Yun's face became even brighter. He bowed and said, "Please." The black-robed man pulled on the woman beside him. His steps were calm and steady as he walked up the stairs and into the main entrance. As soon as they entered, they could feel that something was different. Their bodies seemed to sink into mud, and every step they took was particularly difficult. Dong, dong! A deep and low bell rang out from deep within the mansion. As Wu Yun entered, his complexion changed. This sound should have come from his father's courtyard, from the great drum that couldn't be struck. This was also the first time he had heard it make a sound. Was there some problem? As he was thinking, Wu Yun's eyes widened. Space twisted in front of him, and a middle-aged cultivator stepped out. His temples were white, and he was handsome. At this time, there was a smile on his face. "Honored guests have come from afar, and I have failed to welcome you. I ask that you don't take offense." A voice sounded out from beneath the black robe. "City Lord, there is no need to be so polite. Your young master has already received us outside the city gates." The middle-aged cultivator revealed a look of surprise. "Wu Yun, hurry up and greet our honored guests." It was only then that Wu Yun regained his composure. He hurriedly cupped his hands together and said, "I greet two honored guests. If I offended you before, I ask that you forgive me." For his father to personally come out to greet him, and with such a respectful attitude, one didn't need to be a genius to know that this person was absolutely extraordinary. In particular, the black-robed man's words clearly hinted at him. How could he dare to pretend to be ignorant? The middle-aged cultivator harshly said, "Wu Yun, what did you do?" The black-robed man lightly said, "City Lord, there is no need to be like this. The two of us will not pursue matters of the past. Consider this as repaying the City Lord's previous favor." The middle-aged cultivator cupped his hands together. "I thank honored guests for being so magnanimous." After a brief pause, he said, "Honored guests have come from afar. Please enter the hall and allow me to entertain you." Wu Yun lowered his head. His complexion was pale, and beads of sweat covered his forehead. He could certainly hear the confrontation between the two sides. It was clear that the two people who came today were deliberately using him to repay his father's favor. If his father directly acknowledged them, that meant that they had the qualifications to directly move against him. To put it more bluntly, he had unknowingly taken a trip to the gates of hell just now. After entering the hall and waiting for a maid to serve refreshments, the middle-aged cultivator waved his hand for everyone to leave. He stood up and solemnly bowed. "Wu Donglu greets Your Majesty the Demon Sovereign." He pulled down his black robe, revealing a head of white hair. He had a calm expression and lightly said, "Hunter Lord, there is no need to be so polite. With your status, it is fine to treat me as an equal." Wu Donglu smiled. "If that's the case, then I won't be polite." He cupped his hands together. "Ever since Your Majesty the Demon Sovereign ascended to the throne, Hunter God has yet to offer her congratulations, so I took the initiative to provide information on Old Bastard. If Your Majesty is dissatisfied with this, I ask for your forgiveness." Qin Yu shook his head. "What happened in the past is settled between you and me. I only hope that Hunter God will not try to spy on my whereabouts in the future, otherwise there will be misunderstandings." Wu Donglio's smile was brilliant. "If Your Majesty the Demon Sovereign speaks, then Hunter God will obey. In the future, we will absolutely not involve ourselves in anything related to Your Majesty." Qin Yu said, "Thank you, Hunter Lord. In terms of information channels, Hunter God might be the #1 in the world, but the influence of the demonic path couldn't be underestimated. With the status of the Demon Sovereign, it wouldn't be difficult for him to temporarily block off Hunter God's information channels. As for this brat Wu Yun, Qin Yu had indeed done this intentionally. Removing the favor was only on the surface, but it was more to warn Hunter God not to try to influence him. Wu Donglu sat down. "The Demon Sovereign has come to Flowing Abyss. What orders do you have?" Qin Yu said, "Does Hunter Lord not know why I have come?" The two looked at each other. After several breaths of time, Wu Donglu laughed. "I naturally know. Demon Sovereign, please wait a moment." He lifted a hand and tapped it. Layers of ripples spread out, covering the entire hall. In the next moment, he flipped his hand and took out a jade slip. Its surface shimmered with light. What the Demon Sovereign wants is in this jade slip. Take a look and you'll understand. Qin Yu lifted a hand and took the jade slip. The jade slip dissipated, turning into blue energy that fused into his body. At the same time, information rapidly appeared in his mind. Qin Yu closed his eyes. After several breaths of time, a sharp light flashed in them. This result, he never thought it would happen. Wu Donglu cupped his hands together. "Demon Sovereign, there is no need to worry. What happened before was my lack of consideration. Consider this an apology." Qin Yu said in a low voice, "Is Hunter Lord willing to do so?" Wu Donglu shook his head. "I will say something disrespectful, but if the one who came today wasn't the Demon Sovereign, then perhaps I would have personally made him stay. But because of your status, I am doomed to have no choice but to bow my head. Since that's the case, there is no need to be so conflicted. To use the death of one person to exchange for the stability of the Hunter God organization, I believe that even if the Hunchback knows, he should be able to understand." The information in the sphere was what Qin Yu was looking for. It was the third person of the four old ghosts, the Hunchback, and he was actually a member of the Hunter God organization and held a high position. But at this time, he had been sold out by Wu Donglu. Qin Yu looked at Wu Donglu, who was calm and collected. He labeled him as a real villain in his heart. However, from the perspective of the entire Godon organization, his decision was undoubtedly the best choice. If that's the case, then I won't be polite with Hunter Lord's favor. Wu Donglu smiled. "To be able to do a favor for your majesty, the Demon Sovereign, is my honor, but," Qin Yu said, "I understand. I won't make things difficult for Hunter Lord. As for killing people, I will do it myself." Wu Donglu stood up. 3 days from now, outside Yinchuan Valley. Qin Yu nodded. With a flick of his sleeves, the fluctuations that covered the hall dispersed. He reached out a hand to grab Yu Qi and disappeared from sight. The smile on Wu Donglio's face faded. He indifferently sat down, a chill lingering in his eyes. "Hunter Lord, the matter of the Demon Sovereign being injured has already been confirmed. This is the best chance for us to complete the contract, so why don't you do anything?" A face wriggled on the surface of a stone pillar in the hall. Although it was blurry, one could still feel its dissatisfaction. Wu Donglu sneered. "Do you think I don't want to do anything? The aura on his body is terrifying. Even if you and I work together, we still might not succeed." The blurry face frowned. "I don't believe you. What aura can make you feel such dread?" "Divine flame," Wu Donglu roared out loud. The face on the stone pillar immediately quieted down. Its eyes widened with shock. Wu Donglu would never lie about this sort of matter. But looking at the entire land of divinity and demons, there had never been a true great Tao realm existence. So how could someone possibly light their divine flame? Wu Donglu sucked in a deep breath. "Don't ask me. I have no idea what happened either." It was no wonder that Fan Biyu and Wei Zhongyin, those two old fellows, had successively died at the hands of this severely wounded Demon Sovereign. He had actually lit his divine flame before. Even if he could only maintain it for a short period of time, in that 1 or 2 breaths of time, the strength he possessed was enough to sweep away the world. Betraying the Hunchback was his final move. The most important reason why he didn't hesitate to throw it out was the aura of the divine flame on Qin Yu's body. The other reason was that Wu Donglu wanted to clearly investigate just how Qin Yu had lit his divine flame ahead of time. 3 days from now, the battle at Yinchuan Valley would be the best chance. Outside Ascension City, Qin Yu and Yu Qi quietly walked forwards. Countless eyes were filled with awe and fear. As a group that lived in the shadows, killing and plundering for a living, they had their own channels of information. Although they didn't know just what happened in the City Lord Mansion, just the fact that Wu Yun personally appeared and invited the two of them into the City Lord Mansion was enough to shock everyone. Yu Qi hesitated for a moment. she said in a soft voice. Your Majesty, I always feel that beneath this hunter-lord smile, there is some ill intent hidden within. Qin smiled. Your feeling wasn't wrong. In the main hall, just now, besides you, me, and Wu Donglu, there should have been another person. He narrowed his eyes and continued to say, that person's aura was extremely formidable and filled with hostility. He had been vaguely locking onto us. Yu Qi's eyes widened. She never imagined that such a great danger would be hidden in that peaceful meeting just now. Qin Yu reached out and patted her back. There's no need to worry. I still have a trace of the divine flame's aura that hasn't dissipated yet. Although it isn't powerful, it isn't a problem to scare people. Yu Qi bit her lips. But 3 days from now, Qin Yu said, don't worry, I won't give them a chance to kick me while I'm down. He suddenly turned. Fellow Taoist Westgate, do you think I'm right? Space quietly collapsed. Solitary Westgate stepped out, a helpless look on his face. Qin Yu, if you continue like this, sooner or later you will bear your life. The strange three-legged bird perched on his shoulder nodded again and again. Brat, it isn't easy for a person to live. You must cherish your life. In these past days, it had witnessed with its own eyes how desperately Qin Yu had risked his life. Not only had he killed Fan Buyu and Wei Zongyuan, but he had also resisted the backlash of the demon mark in an exhausted and weak state. Many times he had nearly died. This bird lord had seen many people risk their lives as life, but he was the first to treat this as a normal occurrence. Yu Qi revealed a happy expression. Senior Westgate, with solitary Westgate here, even if there was an accident, there was still room to salvage the situation. She secretly pinched Qin Yu. Since he knew that solitary Westgate was here, why didn't he tell her earlier? He had left her worried all this time. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. When he killed Fan Buyu and Wei Zongyuan, solitary Westgate hadn't arrived yet. But he didn't have any intention of explaining, letting Yu Qi think this was also good. Late at night, a bonfire burned in the wilderness, emitting light, crackling sounds. Yu Qi leaned against Qin Yu. Her eyes closed as she slept soundly. Qin Yu glanced at her face and turned his head. I must thank fellow Taoist Westgate. After you came, she clearly felt much more at ease. In these past days, she slept the best tonight. Solitary Westgate waved his hand. Don't push the blame onto me. The reason this girl slept so well was because she was leaning against you. After a pause, he flicked his finger and a barrier fell over Yu Qi, making it easier for the two to speak. That's enough. Tell me, how are you right now? Qin Yu said, the demon mark is truly terrifying. It has fused together with my soul, and it is impossible to separate it. Either I fuse with it, or I'm swallowed by it. Solitary Westgate had a complex expression. I don't know whether I should praise you for your courage or mock you for being ignorant and fearless. Something like the demon mark is not something that even someone on my level would easily touch. Yet, you actually dared to use it to suppress the Netherworld Lotus. Qin Yu shook his head. I had no other choice. I could only do this. He looked up. Fellow Taoist Westgate, I have always been under your care. I really shouldn't have made any more requests, but right now, the only one I could trust is you. The demon envoy's original actions had left Qin Yu disappointed. He no longer dared to entrust her to him. If I encounter any misfortune, I ask that you protect Yu Qi so that she can continue living in peace. I owe her far too much in this life, and I cannot continue dragging her down. Solitary Westgate frowned. Qin Yu, I can agree, but you should know that my help to you has always been with a purpose. So, if you want to protect her, your best choice is to survive this calamity and continue living. I have a premonition that as long as you can overcome this crisis, your future will be smooth sailing. No one will be able to stop your rise. Qin Yu smiled. I will do my best. 3 days quickly passed. Yinchuan Valley. Hunchback old man's figure appeared. He looked at the empty valley entrance and frowned. At this time, for some unknown reason, he felt an intense threat from the depths of his heart. It was as if this valley was a mouth that wanted to devour him. As he thought of this inexplicable arrangement, his heart skipped a beat. There was a problem. The hunchback old man turned around and left. He didn't hesitate in the slightest. However, as soon as he moved, the space behind him shattered, and a fist punched out. Bang! There was a heaven-shaking explosion. Hunchback old man was sent flying backwards. As he saw who it was that sneak attacked him, his complexion changed. Demon Sovereign. Chinyu raised his hand, and the space-time lock fused into the world. In the next moment, the two of them vanished from sight. Drifting Abyss was the headquarters of the Hunter God organization, so he had to be extra cautious. This place met the conditions to activate the space-time lock, so Chinyu couldn't just leave it there. At the Carp Islands, because of the existence of the Divine Spirit Skeleton and the Divine Seal Pillar, the space-time lock couldn't be replicated, thus he didn't use it. Cauldron Quest City. Wu Donglu fiercely stood up. He clenched his teeth and roared. Holy Emperor Palace, space-time lock. In front of him, there was no one on the swirling picture scroll. His eyes flashed. He lifted a foot and stepped down, his figure piercing through space. The divine flame was an extremely important matter. No matter what, he had to investigate it. But before Wu Donglu could smoothly arrive at Drifting Abyss, a feeling of danger swelled up in his heart. His complexion changed, and he thrust out a hand. Rumble, rumble, space shattered. Wu Donglu staggered backwards, each step causing space to collapse inward, forming a bottomless black hole. Thou Arena Master! He cried out in alarm. Solitary Westgate stepped out from the shattered space, his eyes deep. Lord Hunter, you have hidden your abilities well. It was only today that I learned that you aren't too far away from the realm of transcendence. I believe that in at most 1,000 years, another giant will appear in this world, one that has broken through life and death. Wu Donglu took a deep breath. He cupped his hands together. I didn't know the Arena Master was here. I have been disrespectful. Solitary Westgate bluntly said, I have an agreement with the Demon Sovereign to not allow others to disturb him. I asked for Lord Hunter's forgiveness for his battle with Hunchback Old Man. Wu Donglio's face stiffened. So that's how it is. I was worried that if something happened to the Demon Sovereign here, it would draw the retaliation of the demonic path. Since Arena Master Westgate is here, it seems I was worrying too much. I bid my farewells. He turned and teleported away, vanishing from sight. Solitary Westgate revealed a look of praise. Not to mention his cultivation, just his shamelessness and decisiveness alone made this leader of the God Hunter organization a top-level character. If things didn't work, he would immediately give up and cleanly strip himself of all responsibility. He turned to look at Yin Chuanggu. With his cultivation, he could faintly sense the world reproduced by the space-time lock. Qin Yu and Hunchback Old Man's battle had entered a white-hot stage. But looking at it right now, Qin Yu's chances of victory were high. The strange three-legged bird flew over. Its body had expanded dozens of times over. Yu Qi sat on its back and hurriedly asked, Senior Westgate, do you know what Qin Yu's current situation is? Solitary Westgate smiled. He lifted a hand and pointed forward. Why ask me? You can see for yourself. An overlapping world appeared. Qin Yu stepped out from it. Although his face was pale, his eyes were as bright as ever. He met Yu Qi's gaze and warmly said, I'm fine. He turned and flicked his sleeves. A nameless tomb appeared on the ground. As he looked at the blank tombstone, there was no joy on his face. After continuously killing Fan Buyu and Wei Zongyuan, perhaps he had already adapted to this sort of intense slaughter. Although he had experienced a great battle, Qin Yu's will hadn't been tempered too clearly. In truth, Qin Yu was a bit disappointed in Hunchback Old Man's strength. Solitary Westgate lightly said, there is still one more. Trust me, Woodchopper Fu will not disappoint you. But the premise is that you can find him. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. Someone just made a mistake, so he should be willing to sell me some face. He should be able to tell me the information I want. This fellow Wu Donglu, did he really think that he didn't need to be responsible just because he left so quickly? What a joke. Solitary Westgate shook his head. Right now, you should worry about yourself and how you will survive. The demon Mark began to restlessly stir. The aura it emitted couldn't escape his senses. Qin Yu's complexion paled even further. Next, I will have to trouble fellow Taoist Westgate to continue protecting me. The group flew away from Yun Chuanggu. Just as they found a place to rest, Qin Yu sat down, and the backlash of the demon mark erupted. It was like a violent storm on the sea, accompanied by heaven-shaking waves. His consciousness was like a ferry that could capsize at any moment. An entire night passed. When the skies brightened, Qin Yu's tense body finally relaxed. He gasped for breath and opened his eyes. His tired gaze fell on Yu Qi, and then he nodded to her before falling asleep. After every great battle, the demon mark would seize the chance to cause a backlash, each time more intense than the last. If it weren't for the tempering of his will from killing Fan Biyu and Wei Zongyuan, Qin Yu might not have been able to withstand it. 5 days later, Cauldron Quest City. Qin Yu visited the city lord mansion alone. Wu Donglu seemed to have already expected this. He cupped his hands together and apologized. The demon sovereign is in flowing abyss. If anything were to happen to him, the entire hunting god would not be able to escape responsibility. In my anxiety, I acted rashly. I hope that the demon sovereign does not take offense. His tone was sincere, and his face was full of remorse. Besides having thick skin, this Lord Hunter's acting skills were also top class. Qin Yu lightly said, "As long as Lord Hunter can tell me some information, I will believe you." These words couldn't be more direct. Wu Donglio's expression nearly collapsed. He coughed and said, "If the demon sovereign needs anything, please feel free to speak." Qin Yu said, "Wood chopper Fu." Wu Donglu shook his head. "I do not," afraid that Qin Yu wouldn't believe him. He lifted a hand and pointed forward. Stars appeared in space, forming a vast starry sky. This was the legendary most powerful treasure of the Hunting God organization, the illusory Sea Star chart. Each of the stars corresponded to an identity, and the God Hunter organization had detailed records about him or her. The brighter the star, the higher the status, the higher the strength, and the more detailed the information. Wu Donglu took out a bright star. "I ask that your majesty, the demon sovereign, carefully examine it. Do not damage the treasure." Qin Yu received it and probed it with his divine sense. He was able to see all information regarding Woodchopper Fu. From when he was young and mediocre to when he rose, there were detailed records of him. But in the last 30 million years, the information regarding Woodchopper Fu had become extremely fragmented. Outside Four Seasons City and G City, he had attacked Qin Yu twice. These are the last news he left in this world. Qin Yu put down the star and frowned. Wu Donglu shouldn't be lying. If even the hunting god couldn't find a trace of Woodchopper Fu, wanting to chase down this old fellow was harder than ascending to the heavens. His eyes darkened for a long time. Then, he took a deep breath and suppressed his thoughts. He said in a low voice, "I want to look at another person's information." Wu Donglu asked who. "Immortal sect, Shin Yuanin." Wu Donglio's complexion changed. "No." Although the hunting god has collected information on supreme beings of this world, they have never made it public. Otherwise, they would be committing a great taboo. Qin Yu was expressionless. "I didn't hear you clearly. I asked the hunting god to say it again." Between his fingers, the star that recorded Woodchopper Fu constantly spun. No one knew whether or not it would explode in the next moment. Wu Donglu was silent, his complexion incomparably ugly. He never imagined that the dignified demon sovereign would do something so disgraceful. He took a deep breath and clenched his teeth. "Demon sovereign, you must guarantee that no one else will ever learn of today's events." Qin Yu nodded. "I also don't want to provoke trouble." Wu Donglu formed a law formula with his hands. A dark region of the illusory Sea Star chart suddenly erupted with a brilliant light. This was an extremely bright star that appeared. The moment it appeared, all the other stars in the area lost their luster. Wu Donglu carefully took out the star and said, "Demon Sovereign, this is the first time and also the last time. I hope that you can keep your promise. Otherwise, the hunting god will become your enemy." Qin Yu flicked his sleeves and took the star. He probed it with his divine sense. there was very little information on Shun Yuanin. The current master of Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace had suddenly appeared not long after he had escaped from the immortal sect. At this point, Qin Yu could confirm that Shun Yuanin was Ningling. And the last thing recorded in the star was, Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace has been sealed off, frozen for 30 million miles. It is suspected that Shun Yuanin has suffered a backlash from cultivating the sublime lost emotion code. The cause of the backlash is unknown, but it is speculated that it is related to the demonic path's holy sovereign Qin Yu. The specific circumstances are currently being investigated. Qin Yu's body tensed. It took him several breaths of time to compose himself. He tossed the 2 stars to Wu Donglu and stood up. I bid my farewells. With a single step, he vanished. Wu Donglu held the star that recorded Shun Yuanin's information, his complexion uncertain. Although he thought this was inconceivable, he hesitated for a long time and then added another line. It is inferred that Shun Yuanin and Ningling are the same person. The immortal sect is ordered to investigate. Chapter 624. Drifting Abyss also had a Dao Arena branch. According to Solitary Westgate, as long as it was a place where masters gathered, he would place a piece there. Whether or not he made money was another matter, but at the very least he would have eyes and ears. This branch was located in Survival Seeking City. Solitary Westgate brought Qin Yu and Yu Qi here to temporarily rest. No matter which branch it was, the top training rooms were all beautifully built. Qin Yu leaned against a soft couch beneath a pavilion. He drank a mouthful of wine and let out a comfortable breath. I suddenly feel that your goal in building these Dao arenas, Westgate, is so that you can have a comfortable foothold no matter where you go. Across from him, Solitary Westgate's smile froze for a moment before he fell silent. Qin Yu sat up straight. Am I wrong? Solitary Westgate bitterly smiled. No, you should be the first person to guess the truth. He stood up and faced the beautiful garden. The truth is that when I built the Dao Arena system, my original goal was to make myself and my family happier. Qin Yu had a dignified expression. If my words have caused you to recall some bad memories, then I must express my apologies. Solitary Westgate shook his head. It's fine. He was silent for several breaths of time. There are some things that I should tell you. He turned. Do you mind going somewhere with me? Don't worry. The Dao Arena is safe. As long as the lunar bird stays here, there won't be any problems with Yu Qi. Qin Yu nodded. All right. Solitary Westgate flicked his sleeves. Space collapsed inwards, forming a bottomless black hole. The 2 of them stepped into it. Brilliant colors flashed in front of them at an astonishing speed. Qin Yu could feel that this wasn't a temporary channel, but a special channel that had been arranged long ago. Solitary Westgate explained to him. In all the Dao arenas of the world, there's a hidden channel like this. It can allow me to return home in the shortest time possible. As for why, you will find out in a moment. Qin Yu could feel the heaviness coming from Solitary Westgate's body. He didn't say anything. Soon, they reached the end of the colorful channel. The 2 passed through the exit and appeared above the endless sea. A low mountain peak floated in the skies above the sea. Fog curled around it, obscuring one's line of sight. Solitary Westgate revealed a gentle expression. Qin Yu, you are the first person to step into my home in the land of divinity and demons. In a moment, no matter what you see, please do not reveal it. He took a step forward, and the clouds parted automatically, revealing an ordinary house on the mountainside. Father! Amidst the surprised cheers, the boy ran and threw himself into his arms. Solitary Westgate hugged him and rubbed his head. His smile was unprecedentedly gentle. Has Ning been good lately? The boy nodded again and again. Of course. Mother has praised me many times. As he saw Qin Yu behind him, he timidly hid behind Solitary Westgate. Don't be afraid. This is your Uncle Qin Yu, my good friend. Qin Yu suppressed the shock in his heart and bowed slightly. Hello, and ran. I often hear your father mention you. You really are an obedient child. And Ning poked his head out and smiled embarrassedly, but his eyes revealed intimacy. The middle-aged woman came out to greet them. She earnestly bowed to Qin Yu and pulled Ning away. Listen to me and follow me to prepare some food. Don't disturb your father and uncle. As Qin Yu watched the mother and son leave, he turned to look at solitary Westgate. His expression became dignified. With his cultivation and boundary, he could naturally see that this mother and son pair that seemed no different from ordinary people were in truth two masses of souls that had already died. It was just that a formidable strength of rules had molded their bodies and forcefully preserved their souls that should have dissipated a long time ago. Now, you know everything, Solitary Westgate said in a low voice. I once said that there would be a matter in the future that I would need your help with, and that matter is to help me resurrect my dead wife and son. Qin Yu frowned. Westgate, I can help you, but the great terror of life and death is something that even calamity immortals find difficult to transcend. Moreover, what you need to do is bring them back from the dead. This matter has never been recorded in the demonic path. Are you sure you can do it? Solitary Westgate lightly said. In the past, after Yin Yang and Ning died, I crazily searched for a way to save them. Thus, I divided up this world and reversed the rules here so that their souls could continue on. At the time, I also thought that they would never be able to come back to life. That was until I discovered a great secret of this world. I cannot say it now. Not because I don't want to tell you, but because if I mention it, there's a chance that it will stir up the aura and cause unpredictable consequences. But I am certain that as long as you help me with all your strength, they will have a chance to come back to life. And for this, I will give you sufficient repayment. Qin Yu's eyebrows relaxed. Even if there is no repayment, the help you gave me in the past is already enough. Solitary Westgate's lips moved. Thank you. Qin Yu smiled. I suddenly feel a great pressure. It seems that my life no longer simply belongs to me. Solitary Westgate said, so you must live on. You absolutely cannot die. Because you're my only hope to resurrect my wife and son. It was impossible for Yun Yang and Ning to wait for a second turning point to appear. The wine and food were soon prepared. Yin Yang and Ning sat down. As they watched Solitary Westgate and Qin Yu drink, their eyes were filled with joy. It seemed that it had been a long time since a guest had come to their home. After Ning and Qin Yu became a little more familiar with each other, they began to chat. Uncle Qin, just what is the outside world like? In this world, are there really large birds that can cover the skies just by spreading their wings? I want to see the sea, but Father said that I was too young and that I would be picked up by the big fish in the sea. Is that right? I'm bored at home. Father often goes out, and only Mother accompanies me. I want to go out and take a look. Can you take me? Looking at Ning's innocent eyes and the longing on her face, Qin Yu felt his heart ache. He put down his wine cup and smiled. And Ning, be obedient. The outside world isn't safe and your father doesn't trust you to go out. But Uncle guarantees you that it won't be long before Ning leaves this place. Really? But if that's the case, then Father has already said it. Ning's eyes brightened before dimming. Solitary Westgate said, believe in your Uncle Qin's words. He won't lie to you. Night arrived, and Ning and Yin Yang fell asleep one after another. Qin Yu waited outside the courtyard. After a long time, Solitary Westgate came out, a bit tired. The reason you arranged a fast transmission channel in the Tao arena under the heavens is because sister-in-law and nephew might encounter a situation at any time, right? To resist the samsara of the heavenly Tao, even someone as strong as Solitary Westgate would inevitably have to pay a price. Solitary Westgate rubbed his temples. That's right. As time passes, their situation becomes worse and worse. I'm worried. He looked at Qin Yu. So, if possible, I ask that you become stronger as soon as possible and reach a level that transcends life and death. Only then can I bring you to open that secret. Qin Yu took a deep breath. Let's go. Let's discuss what we should do next. If he couldn't find Woodchopper Fu, then he could only end the life and death battle ahead of time. Although there were many powerhouses in the land of divinity and demons, there weren't many that had the qualifications to be Qin Yu's whetstone. Taking a step back, even if there were, he couldn't recklessly attack. Otherwise, Even if he was the demonic path's holy sovereign, he still wouldn't be able to withstand the anger of the masses. In this world, there was no one that could truly be unshackled. Not even the supreme beings of this world. Solitary Westgate nodded. He flicked his sleeves and opened up a channel. The two of them left this separate small world. Walala. The moment they stepped into the channel, you could clearly hear the sound of waves. Solitary Westgate's figure paused for a moment, and Ning wanted to see the sea, but he didn't know that beneath the clouds and fog that obscured his line of sight was the boundless and endless sea. This sort of sorrow was something he had to endure, but it was even more deeply branded in Solitary Westgate's heart. It was like a hot iron that constantly burned at his heart. Even if he was a supreme being of this world and possessed unsurpassed authority. So what if he could cause the heavens to collapse and the earth to sink in with just a thought? In the end, he was still a lonely man whose wife had died and his son had died. Drifting abyss, seeking survival cities Dao arena. Solitary Westgate and Qin Yu walked out one after another and the channel vanished with them. Although only several hours had passed after what happened just now, the relationship between the two of them had become even closer. Woodchopper Fu is a qualified whetstone, but since I can't find him now, I can only stop my plan to temper myself between life and death. After Solitary Westgate sat down, he went straight to the point. I know of a place that is a supreme treasure land for tempering one's will. But that place is extremely dangerous. If the demonic path didn't tell you about it, then they should have some scruples about it. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. If I don't go, Westgate, what do you think are my chances of surviving the backlash of the demon mark? Solitary Westgate lifted a finger. At most 10%, or even lower. Qin Yu said, the reason I am risking my life is because I cherish my life. If there is a greater chance that I can live on, then I will fight for it. Moreover, my luck has always been extremely good. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for me to emerge from that waning land of exiles and have my current achievements. Solitary Westgate lightly said, although I also hope that you will go, I must make things clear to you. Since ancient times, there have been many people that have entered the sealed stone world, but the number of people that have been able to come out is no more than 10. In the rumors, only by tempering one's will to the point that it can affect reality. That is, when one's will becomes substantialized, can one break open the world and return to the land of divinity and demons. Consider it carefully. If you're interested, then I'll tell you more about the sealed stone world. Qin Yu said, there is no need to consider it. I will go. Solitary Westgate nodded. Very good. If you hesitate, then I will urge you to give up. If you don't even have the courage to fight, then it is impossible for you to leave the sealed stone world. Qin Yu said, I'm all ears. Half a day later, Qin Yu bid his farewells with Yu Qi. He had already decided to go to the sealed stone world, but before that he needed to return to the demonic path to make some arrangements. He had already received a sufficient lesson from the sea of purgatory. Before he left, he naturally had to make preparations to deal with any accidents. If you dare to abandon me and vanish without a trace, I will immediately commit suicide. Yu Qi's words cut off any room for Qin Yu to persuade her. Her expression was earnest, without any hint of joking at all. Qin Yu hesitated again and again before finally swallowing his words. His heart was touched. Follow each other in life and death was a simple phrase. But how many people in this world could truly accomplish this? To encounter, it was his life's greatest fortune. 10 days later, the demonic path's holy emperor palace was sealed off. The holy sovereign announced that he would be going into seclusion. Demonic energy billowed into the heavens. On the same day, Qin Yu looked at the demon envoy. He lightly said, I cannot be sure what the result will be, but I hope that you will not disappoint me again. He turned and floated away with Yu Qi, leaving behind the demon envoy. The demon envoy stood where he was, his complexion uncertain. After a long time, the demon envoy bowed. Your Majesty, rest assured that this subordinate will complete your orders no matter the cost. In truth, the sealed stone world was only a name given by the cultivator who first discovered it because of a half-broken stone tablet. Where did it come from? What background did it have? Why did it arrive in the land of divinity and demons? These are all mysteries. No one knew the answer to this day. But there was one thing that was certain. The sealed stone within the sealed stone world had a formidable tempering effect on a cultivator's will. 80 million years ago, the first cultivator to leave the sealed stone world was called Rui. He rose like a comet, sweeping through the world and establishing a transcendent empire. He became the first transcendent great emperor in history to unify the land of divinity and demons. Rui was the founding great emperor of the Great Zhou Empire. In the Sea of Purgatory, he was a terrifying existence that had once appeared like a divine dragon. This founding great emperor's most terrifying method was the suppression of his will. His peak record was a single battle where he defeated 5 super powerhouses at the same level and killed 3 of them. He was known as the world's #1 powerhouse in the endless river of time for the last 100 million years. It was because of this that the sealed stone world was valued by the world. There was a time when a tide of people flocked to it, but as time passed, the cruel reality was gradually revealed. When the people of the world discovered that entering the sealed stone world meant eternal imprisonment, this tide soon dissipated. But the truth was that for the last tens of millions of years, there had always been people that entered the sealed stone world. Some were driven to a dead end, and their lifespans reached the limit. Some tried to break through their shackles and step into a higher realm. There were also some influences that were simple. In order to have a chance to create an incomparably powerful existence, they took the initiative to send their subordinates in. Emperor Zhou's existence was the best example of what motivated them to constantly send people into the sealed stone world. Of course, because Emperor Zhou was far too dazzling, he overshadowed the glory of others. In truth, for the last tens of millions of years, there were others that left the sealed stone world. Each one of them was unparalleled in their generation, possessing the strength to suppress their entire era. And in order to enter the sealed stone world, one first needed to obtain a key. This key was a special stone bead, and there was only one place one could find it. As mentioned before, the 7 empires divided the endless territory of the land of divinity and demons. But there were always some places that they couldn't touch. For instance, Flowing Abyss. Or, for instance, Zhulu. It was located within the territory of the Han Empire. But since ancient times, it had always been autonomous. This was because the one that ruled this land was the Stone Sealing Sect. And in the entire world, the Stone Sealing Sect was the only influence that could take out the sealed stone world. Over the endless years, there were people that tried to take control of the entire Stone Sealing Sect. Some people even tried to steal the method to create the stone beads. But without exception, all of their attempts ended in failure. Perhaps it wasn't appropriate to say that they failed, because even though they had taken control of the Stone Sealing Sect and captured everyone in the sect, they couldn't find a method to create the stone beads. In fact, they couldn't even obtain an extra stone bead. Killing people was useless. No matter how heavy the casualties were, no one from the Stone Sealing Sect relented. In the end, in order to prevent the stone beads from going extinct, there were always influences that interfered and protected the inheritance of the Stone Sealing Sect. After this happened several times, no one dared to attack the Stone Sealing Sect again. If everyone wanted the stone beads, they would honestly participate in the Stone Sealing Sect's auction. Any influence that directly attacked the Stone Sealing Sect will not be able to obtain a single stone bead. If someone privately transfers a stone bead, they will also lose the qualifications to obtain a stone bead. Qin Yu softly said. He looked up at the common-looking building in front of him and said, "We've arrived." Yu Qi's eyes widened, a blank look on her face. She never imagined that the Stone Sealing Sect, which had such a legendary history, would auction off the stone beads in such a place. Qin Yu stepped forward and knocked on the door. After the person opened it, he handed over the Jade Archive. The stiff-faced young cultivator lowered his head and examined it. Then, he put away the jade archive and coldly said, "Please come in." The outside of the room wasn't remarkable, and the inside was even more cramped. But the young cultivator walked to a wooden cabinet in the corner and placed a hand on it. The surface of the cabinet immediately lit up with runes that wove together, forming a dazzling fluctuation. "Two guests, please." Qin Yu didn't hesitate. He pulled Yu Qi and stepped inside. The world around them twisted and brightened. The two of them had appeared in an extremely grand hall. In the center of the hall was a high platform. Stone chairs were arranged around the high platform, and over half of the stone chairs were already occupied by cultivators. Everyone was covered in a layer of light that concealed their appearances and auras. There was no need to worry that others would remember them. "Two guests, please take a seat. The auction will soon begin," a female stone ceiling sect cultivator respectfully said. But her expression was similarly cold. According to the directions, Qin Yu and Yu Qi soon sat down. After waiting for a moment, a white-eyebrowed old man stepped onto the high platform and announced the start of the auction. In today's auction, there are a total of 12 stone beads. Of these, 6 are low-grade, 4 are medium-grade, and 2 are high-grade. Perhaps there are some new fellow Taoists that might not be aware of the grading of stone beads. High, medium-grade, and low-grade stone beads can all be used to enter the sealed stone world. But low-grade stone beads do not have the ability to resist. A medium-grade stone bead can resist the annihilation of will once, and a high-grade stone bead can resist it 3 times. The annihilation of will refers to the terrifying aura that suddenly erupts within the sealed stone world. There are no rules to its appearance, and it is the strongest threat within the sealed stone world. Everyone, please be aware that our auction house only accepts spirit stones for bidding. All right, let us begin the auction now. We will start with the low-grade stone beads. The first stone bead's base price is 10 million spirit stones, and there is no limit to the amount of additional bids. The hall was filled with excited shouts. High-grade stone beads were something that could only be encountered through a stroke of luck. Much less today, 2 had appeared. However, many people were well aware that the price of high-grade stone beads was terrifyingly high, and it would be difficult to compete for them. It would be better to take advantage of the time when everyone's attention was focused on one of the low-grade stone beads. Thus, there was no awkward silence in the auction. 6 low-grade stone beads were quickly sold off, and the following 4 medium-grade stone beads also found their own buyers after a short struggle. The last 2 are also the only 2 high-grade stone beads today. The base price is 100 million spirit stones, and there is no limit to the amount of additional bids. The first stone bead will be auctioned off. Chapter 625. The hall fell silent. Everyone's hearts shook. Many gloomy eyes gathered from all directions, each one of them emitting a hostile aura. There were many people competing for the 2 high-grade stone beads. Although everyone knew that the final price would be high, they still found it hard to accept Qin Yu's bidding method. Won 1 billion. A guest coldly sneered and shouted out a bid, a mocking look in his eyes. Calling out a high price to scare away other competitors was indeed a good method in an auction. But today it was useless. As expected, several more people continued to bid, pushing the price to 1.5 billion spirit stones. The ones competing now were all cultivators with great backgrounds. The reason they entered the sealed stone world was to constantly grow stronger so that one day they could leave. But they might not be willing to go. In order to appease them, the influences behind them would tolerate some of their insolence. For instance, spending spirit stones to buy a life-saving high-grade stone bead was tacitly agreed upon. Qin Yu lifted his hand. 3 billion. He directly doubled it. Many of the cultivators that came to bid for the stone beads immediately paled. Although they had large families and businesses, they still couldn't withstand such a terrifying price. It was reasonable to buy a life-saving stone bead for a subordinate, but that had to be limited to a reasonable range. 3, 1 billion. The first guest shouted out once more. His voice was icy cold, like a winter storm. 3, 2 billion. 3, 3 billion. There were only 3 competitors left. Qin Yu raised his hand for the third time. 5 billion. The dust settled. His momentum of winning was displayed to the fullest. In particular, that careless attitude of his made others feel uncertain. Whatever, there was still the second high-grade stone bead. There was no need to pay such a great price for it. On the high platform, the old man from the sealed stone sect shouted out, 5 billion. If no other fellow Taoists increase the price, the stone bead will belong to this guest. After several breaths of time, the entire hall fell silent. The old man waved his hand and said, sold. Congratulations to this guest. Immediately, a sealed stone sect cultivator brought the stone bead over. Qin Yu took out his spirit stone card and soon completed the transaction, dispelling the last hopes of some people. The auction continued. The stone sealing sect elder said, the auction for the second high-grade stone bead will begin. Everyone, please grasp this opportunity. Perhaps there won't be another high-grade stone bead appearing for a very long time. The cultivator who bid right after Qin Yu hurriedly said, 8 billion. Obviously, he wanted to use the same method to tell those who were fighting over the stone bead that he must get it. However, it was obvious that no one wanted to give up. After a few consecutive bids, the price rose all the way to 2 billion, which was even more shocking than the first one. Jiang Zhoudao's face paled. He turned his head and whispered something to the person beside him. The latter hesitated a little and nodded. 4 billion. No one should even think about competing with him. Sure enough, his opponents fell into silence. Jiang Zhoudao revealed a smile at the corner of his mouth. However, before he could smile completely, a calm voice sounded. 6 billion. Who? Jiang Haodao turned his head and glared at Qin Yu. This bastard. Earlier, he had already obtained a high-grade stone bead, but now, he still wanted to interfere. 7 billion. Qin Yu frowned and said, 10 billion. These 2 high-grade stone beads just happened to belong to him and Yu Qi. Qin Yu wouldn't miss out on any of them. As for spirit stones, as the demonic path's holy sovereign, a supreme existence of the world, wealth had already lost all meaning to him. Shua. Jing Haodao violently stood up. If looks could kill, Qin Yu would have already been dismembered. He was well aware that no matter how high his status was, the sect would never pay over 10 billion for a high-grade stone bead. In other words, it was impossible for him to bid again. How hateful! Within the world of the sealed stone, a high-grade stone bead could save his life twice. If he missed it today, he wouldn't be able to wait for the next auction. Moreover, even if he waited until the next auction, there might not be another high-grade stone bead that would appear. Taking a deep breath, Jiang Haodao turned and left the grand hall. On the high platform, the old man from the sealed stone sect revealed a bit of surprise. He lifted his hand and said, 10 billion spirit stones. Congratulations to this fellow Taoist for winning another high-grade stone bead. After the payment was completed and the second stone bead was taken, Qin Yu didn't stay. He pulled Yu Qi and left. Walala. Within the grand hall, most of the cultivators participating in the auction had left. 2 high-grade stone beads had a total value of 15 billion spirit stones. This was more than enough to attract everyone's attention. Moreover, they were currently in Zhulu, a land of chaos where there was no order. As long as they left the auction house, there would definitely be people making a move. They didn't need to join in, but there was no harm in watching the fun. If their luck was good, who knew what would happen in the end? But contrary to everyone's expectations, after Qin Yu and Yu Qi left the auction house, they vanished in front of everyone like ghosts. No matter how crazily they searched, they couldn't find any trace of them. Finally, they could only helplessly disperse. In the folded space, Qin Yu had a calm expression. He stood with Yu Qi not too far away from the entrance of the auction house. As he saw those people leave, the excitement on his face gradually turned to disappointment. Let's go. Qin Yu pulled Yu Qi and left. The folded space continued to extend forward, like a silent pool of flowing mercury. The function of the space-time lock wasn't just to suppress and imprison others. It could also create a space that overlapped with the main world and serve as a temporary shelter. Unless one's cultivation reached a boundary that transcended life and death like solitary westgates, it would be difficult to sense the traces of the space-time lock. After entering the sealed stone world, he could encounter dangers at any time. The space-time lock was the only way for Chinyu to rest and resist the backlash of the demon mark. 3 days after the auction ended, in a cave in the wilderness of Zhulu, Chinyu and Yuqi stood side by side, holding hands. The stone beads in their hands lit up at the same time. A fluctuation erupted, like a disturbed surface of water. The two figures were swallowed up from sight. In the void, countless stones of different shapes and sizes quietly floated in the air, spinning at a fixed speed like a boundless nebula. Suddenly, the void twisted and two figures rushed out. The woman bent over and violently coughed. The man hugged her and gently patted her back. It was only after a long time that she recovered and shook her head, indicating that she was much better. These two people were Chinyu and Yuqi, who had been transmitted into the sealed stone world through the stone beads. The transmission just now could be said to have been a dizzying, tumbling world. Even with Chinyu's cultivation, he still felt short of breath. As for Yuqi, if it weren't for him protecting her, the crushing strength of the transmission would have been enough to crush her to pieces. This is the sealed stone world, Yuqi mumbled. She looked at the endless stone kingdom in front of her. Chinyu nodded, a dignified look on his face. In his eyes, every stone contained a formidable aura. It was like the passage of billions of years, the countless calamities and tribulations they had experienced, yet none of them were able to destroy them in the slightest. This was a kind of eternal and immortal will. Chinyu's heart raced, and great waves rose up in his mind. He couldn't imagine just what level of existence could leave behind an indelible mark on these stones. Chinyu, what is it? Yuqi revealed a worried expression. Chinyu took a deep breath. It's nothing. It's just that I suddenly feel very small. There was always a higher mountain, a stronger person. At this moment, Chinyu suddenly had a profound understanding. He didn't know the origin of the sealed stone world, but had inevitably witnessed an unimaginable glory. That was a level that Chinyu couldn't touch at his current realm. The difference was like the heavens and earth. Yuqi had a thoughtful look. These stones, are they amazing? Chinyu nodded. Yes, they're very, very amazing. He casually pointed a finger. If I can reach 1/10 of the level of the remnant while on these stones, then the problem of the demon mark backlash will be easily solved. Yuqi cried out in alarm. She finally understood why Chinyu had sighed with emotion. She immediately revealed a happy expression. Then, these stones will be of great help to you? Chinyu said, I don't know right now, but I'm preparing to give it a try. He glanced at the endless void behind him. Although he didn't know what was hidden in that void, his intuition told him that it was best not to satisfy his own curiosity. He took a step forwards and approached the outermost stone. When he was within 100 feet of it, his complexion changed. A boundless pressure suddenly came crashing down. It was like a mountain pressing down on his chest, and he had to focus his mind to resist it. Chinyu closed his eyes. After sensing for a long time, he smiled. Yes, this was the place he needed. Yuqi, I'm going to start cultivating. You first. Before he finished speaking, Chinyu frowned. He looked into the distant void. Following the nebula formed by the stones, several distressed figures were moving forwards. Several of them had pale faces. It was clear they had been injured. Get behind me. Chinyu grabbed Yuqi and welcomed the several people flying towards him. A cultivator screamed, Hurry and run. The people in the sealed stone world want to steal our stone beads. Before his voice fell, this person's eyes widened. With a miserable scream, his chest burst open. A black shadow flowed out. It stretched out and turned into a cultivator. His 5 fingers held onto the still boiling hot and beating heart. He laughed in an incomparably cheerful manner. I don't like killing people, but little fellows, why can't you be obedient and listen to me? Schwa, schwa. Several black-clothed cultivators caught up, surrounding the group. Pa. The heart was crushed and blood splashed onto the corners of the cultivator's lips. He licked it and revealed an expression of enjoyment. He almost moaned, "I'll give you one last chance. Honestly, cut off all ties with me and hand over the stone beads. Otherwise, after I catch you, I won't mind steaming half of you and frying the other half." To say such words in such a tone was especially cold and sinister, like a viper coiling around their necks. The several people that were surrounded instantly lost all color. Suddenly, a cultivator shouted out, "Senior, I know a place where you can find high-grade stone beads. As long as you let me go, I will immediately tell you." "High-grade stone beads?" The blood-sucking cultivator's eyes brightened. "You should know that if you lie to me, your fate will be miserable, right?" Jiangzhou Island suppressed his fear and nodded. "This junior guarantees that as long as you agree, I will soon find the stone beads." The blood-sucking cultivator nodded. "Very good, you've successfully moved me. I will give you the promise you want. You can speak now." Jiangzhou Island pointed a finger. "Those two people each have a high-grade stone bead on them." Qin Yu flicked his sleeves, and Yu Qi's figure vanished. He looked up at Jiangzhou Island, his expression calm. When this person spoke, he had already expected it. Now, he was only confirming it. The blood-sucking cultivator's pupils shrank. He chuckled. "Interesting, very interesting." He looked at Qin Yu. After several breaths of silence, he suddenly said, "Hand over 2 high-grade stone beads, and I will let you go." Qin Yu shook his head. The blood-sucking cultivator's eyes turned. He pointed at Jiangzhou Island and said, "How about adding his life? As long as you agree, I will immediately kill him." Jiangzhou Island's face filled with anger. "Senior, you promised me." The blood-sucking cultivator coldly sneered. "Promise? That sort of thing can only deceive you newbies that have just arrived in the sealed stone world." He looked at Qin Yu. "I'm very sincere. How about it?" Qin Yu lightly said, "His life isn't worth anything." The blood-sucking cultivator shook his head. "Then there's nothing else I can do. It looks like I will have to do it myself. I hope that your strength is proportional to your confidence." Bang! A tyrannical strength broke out from his body, accompanied by a disdainful aura. Qin Yu stuffily coughed, and his face paled. Chapter 626. The world of the sealed stone was broken and incomplete. No one could predict whether or not those peaceful and harmless sealing stones would erupt with terrifying fluctuations in the next moment that could instantly annihilate one's consciousness. This sort of fluctuation was called will destruction. It could instantly kill all life within its range. The cultivators that had entered the sealed stone world earlier had experienced just how terrifying this will destruction was. Their icy gazes fell onto the newcomers that had just entered. Thus, this was what happened today. They had stolen the stone bead of a newcomer to increase their own safety. The bloodthirsty cultivator was named Song Zhongyi. He was a slightly famous character in the sealed stone world. His methods were bloody and cruel, and very few people were willing to offend him. Of course, he wasn't weak. By borrowing the tempering of the sealed stone world, he had smoothly stepped into the calamity immortal realm. This was the fundamental reason he was able to live until now. Qin Yu placed Yu Qi into the space-time lock's replicated world. Song Zhongyi lost his sense of her. Thus a sense of dread rose in his heart. If it weren't for the temptation of the high-grade stone bead being too great, he wouldn't have done anything. The sealed stone world seemed calm and peaceful, but because of the struggle for the stone bead, the degree of brutality was hard to imagine. Those that survived all held a deep reverence towards life and wouldn't easily take risks with their lives. However, since they attacked, they wouldn't hold back at all. They would do everything in their power to kill their opponents and allow themselves to survive. At this time, Qin Yu felt as if an iron rod had ruthlessly struck him in the head. His field of vision darkened and his ears buzzed. In this state, even if he tried to attack, his strength would be greatly reduced. Bang! With a loud explosion, Qin Yu drew backwards. The strength that crashed into his body was like flowing magma, wildly rampaging about, carrying with it a horrifying destructive attribute. Wherever it went, his flesh and blood cracked apart. In just the blink of an eye, Chinyu had turned into a burnt doll. His skin was covered in cracks, but not a single drop of blood flowed out from these cracks. At this moment, the strength of a saint-step demon body was fully displayed. His heart wildly beat, and his rich blood energy erupted with it. The wounds on his skin rapidly healed and healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. As long as it wasn't a fatal injury, he could recover in a short period of time. Song Zhongyi smiled. No matter how strong your mortal body is, there will come a time when it can't withstand it. It seems that your self-confidence will ultimately kill you. The power of words could also place a powerful psychological pressure on an opponent. Unfortunately, this wasn't of any use to Chinyu. His heart had already been tempered to a formidable degree, and besides a few people he cared about, he wouldn't be shaken by the outside world. The suppression of will still existed, but after the initial shock, Chinyu gradually adapted to it. His eyes brightened and his gaze became firm. Perhaps the one who will die today will be you. He raised his hand and punched out. Berserk power surged out. Song Zhongyi sneered and flicked his sleeves to neutralize it. You won't cry until you see the coffin. Today, I will send you to the west. Chinyu fell into an absolute disadvantage. He was like a human-shaped ball that was sent flying back and forth. But Song Zhongyi's complexion became increasingly ugly. This was because as time passed, the strength that Chinyu erupted with was gradually becoming stronger. From a rubber ball, it turned into a stone ball, and then it began to evolve into an iron ball. Even if he was sent flying away, the shaking strength was still giving him a headache. Song Zhongyi paled. He had no choice but to accept reality. He didn't have the qualifications to kill Chinyu, and if he continued, there was a chance he would be killed instead. In truth, the reason was simple. Chinyu's was already firm and tyrannical enough. He was like a raw stone that, under the polishing of Song Zhongyi, began to bloom. Bang! With another loud explosion, Song Zhongyi stuffily coughed and drew back. He looked at the pale-faced Chinyu, whose aura was even stronger than before. He cursed inwardly at this freak of nature. Without a word, he turned and walked away. If he continued, he wouldn't be able to leave even if he wanted to. Chinyu was fighting to his heart's content. He simply didn't want to stop. But after taking a single step, he stopped and secretly sighed. Song Zhongyi was slightly weaker than him, but because of the suppression of will, he was able to suppress him. To Chinyu, he could be considered the perfect sparring partner. In a fight, Chinyu could rapidly adapt to the suppression of will and also strengthen his own will. If it weren't for him worrying about the backlash of the demon mark, Chinyu would never have let him leave so easily. Jiang Zhoudao was dumbfounded. After a moment of absent-mindedness, his face suddenly lost all color. He never imagined that the insufferably tyrannical Song Zhongyi would actually be scared away, of course. He never imagined that Chinyu would actually have a calamity immortal cultivation. Big brother, you are already a calamity immortal. Wouldn't it be better if you stayed in the land of divinity and demons and enjoyed your life? Why did you come to the sealed stone world to harm people? Puff! Jiang Zhoudao fell to his knees. Senior, I have eyes but fail to see. I beg you to show mercy. In my next life, Pa. His head exploded and red and white matter flew out. Chinyu drew back his hand without expression. If apologies were useful, then no one would have died in this world. Today, he was strong enough. If it were anyone else, they would have already suffered a calamity. Senior, please spare us. The other cultivators were so frightened that they collapsed to the ground. Their bodies shivered with fear. Chinyu glanced at them and lightly said, "You can all leave." Although they were the ones who led Song Zhongyi and the others here, it wasn't intentional. The person who was killed just now had even warned them. Chinyu didn't fear killing others, but he also didn't want to indulge himself in slaughtering the innocent. Everyone had to have their own bottom line. Thank you, Senior. Thank you, Senior. After surviving a calamity, the several people kowtowed repeatedly and crawled up to leave. If they didn't leave now, did they want to wait for Yu to change his mind? After these people left, Yu turned and walked away. Although he had scared away Song Zhomi, he didn't think he could rampage through the sealed stone world. After tens of millions of years, countless cultivators had entered. Although the vast majority of them had died, those that survived were absolutely masters. Within the sealed stone world, there were definitely terrifying level powerhouses. Yu naturally had to be a bit more cautious. After flying far away, Yu came to a stop. He already understood that although the outermost region of the sealed stone world didn't seem to have any pressure, the truth was that it was the most dangerous place. Anyone who wanted to steal the stone bead could fly out from the nebula and accidentally meet him there. The best method was to enter the nebula as soon as possible. At that time, it would be much safer. With a thought, Yu Qi appeared in front of him. Yu said, "I will immediately begin cultivating. Do you want to wait for me, or come with me?" Yu Qi directly said, "I'll come with you." With her current cultivation, the disparity between her and Yu's was far too great. If she wanted to be with him forever, she would have to work hard to follow in his footsteps. Yu nodded. "Good. Remember not to force yourself. If anything goes wrong, I will immediately transfer you to the duplicate world." The sealed stone cannot be duplicated, so the duplicate world can only be a narrow space used for hiding or seclusion. Moreover, it cannot be moved. The two of them each chose a sealed stone. After approaching a 100-foot radius, they sat down cross-legged. Yu Qi soon stopped cultivating. She hurriedly stood up and withdrew from the suppression range. She was panting and sweating. She looked up at the motionless Yu, a look of anticipation in her eyes. You had to succeed. At this time, Yu suddenly opened his eyes. He stood up and walked forwards. He soon arrived in front of the sealed stone he chose and placed a hand on it. A warm feeling gushed out, directly fusing into his mind. You could clearly feel his will rising. This was an indescribable feeling. It was mysterious and mystical, but it truly existed, leaving one lost in it. After a long time, Yu let out a long breath. He smiled. It was only now that Yu Qi dared to speak. "Yu, what is it?" Yu turned and said, "I have already obtained the approval of this sealed stone. Now, the outermost sealed stone no longer suppresses me." Yu Qi's eyes brightened. "Then Yu nodded. "I've had a great harvest. Not only can the suppression of the sealed stone sharpen my will, but after obtaining its approval, I can also obtain a gift. That should be that if I place the aura of the person with the undying will on these sealed stones, it can directly increase the intensity of my will." He looked at the nebula formed by endless stones, sealed stones, in front of him, and a warm current surged in his chest. The deeper one went into the sealed stone nebula, the larger they would be and the stronger the will contained would be. If one day he could really reach the end, Yu took a deep breath and suppressed his surging emotions. He said, "Yu Qi, I'm going to continue cultivating." Yu Qi hurriedly said, "Don't worry about me, just continue." Yu nodded. After walking forwards several hundred feet, he chose a slightly larger sealed stone and sat down cross-legged in the void. Looking at his back, Yu Qi revealed a proud expression. Before entering the sealed stone world, she had specifically looked up information on this. Although the outermost sealed stone didn't contain a strong will, the fact that Yu was able to pass through it so quickly proved how strong he was. However, to find such a powerful man, she felt a great deal of pressure. Pursing her lips, Yu Qi took a deep breath. She walked into the range of the will's suppression and closed her eyes to cultivate. In the quiet sealed stone world, it was nearly impossible to sense the passage of time. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. The sealed stone world in front of Yu had changed from the initial size of half a person to the current size of several feet. Its colors seemed to have deepened, and a halo of light occasionally flashed on its surface. 2 months ago, Yu Qi had no choice but to enter the space-time lock's replicated world. Her ability to withstand pressure simply couldn't compare with Yu's, and if the two of them were too far apart, there was a chance of an accident occurring. Luckily, Yu Qi didn't mind this at all. Instead, She comforted Chinyu. After entering the replicated world, she could also cultivate, and it wouldn't be hard to pass the time. At the start, Chinyu would often enter the replicated world to see her. But afterwards, he was driven out by Yuchi and told to concentrate on cultivating. In any case, every time Chinyu moved, he would need to temporarily put away the replicated world. At that time, they would naturally meet again. Shua. Chinyu's eyes flashed open, a crystalline light flashing in them. He stood up and let out a light breath. After spending 4 days, he had finally obtained its approval. He took several quick steps forwards and arrived above the sealed stone that was several dozen feet wide. He reached out a hand and carefully felt the warmth that fused into his body. After a long time, he opened his eyes. He turned around and looked at the endless sealed stones. As he thought back to his 3 months of improvement, Chinyu couldn't help but smile. In these 3 months, the demon mark had suffered a backlash several times, but he had resisted it each time. Although it was still dangerous, it was much easier than before. The demon mark seemed to have sensed that Chinyu's will had become stronger. It seemed to be accumulating strength. Almost a month had passed since the last backlash, and there were no signs of it activating. Perhaps it was looking for a suitable opportunity. The revolution has not yet succeeded. Comrade, you still need to work hard, Chinyu whispered. Although he was a bit puzzled by the Tao Arena Master's words, he understood the general meaning behind them. With a thought, Chinyu vanished and entered the replicated world. The replicated world was only several dozen feet in size. Sensing Chinyu's arrival, Yuchi's eyes moved. She slowly opened them and revealed an incomparably brilliant smile. Chinyu suddenly felt a deep sense of guilt. He had been left alone in the replicated world. It was completely silent and deathly silent. He had experienced this sort of dreariness before, so he naturally understood it better. I'm sorry. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Yuchi. She hugged Chinyu and said, "Don't say sorry to me. As long as I am with you, that is what I love the most." Chinyu took a deep breath, smelling the fragrance on her body. After several breaths of silence, he suddenly said, "Shun Yuanin is likely Ningling. She has her own difficulties, so she cannot recognize me." There were some words that he had to make clear, even if it would seem heartless. Yuchi looked up. "I understand." Chinyu frowned. Yuchi reached out a hand and stroked the point between his eyebrows. "In the past, I didn't want to jump in, nor could I. But since Ningling gave me a chance, I must accept the consequences." She wrinkled her nose. "Don't think about leaving me behind. Don't ever think about it." Feeling her sincerity, warmth flowed through Chinyu's heart. He tightly held on to her. "That's enough. Don't be so wishy-washy. Whether or not we can leave is still uncertain. If we are trapped here forever, then let Ningling regret it for the rest of her life." Chinyu smiled. "Don't worry. We will definitely leave this place." Shua. The replication space dissipated. Chinyu appeared holding Yuchi, resisting the crushing will around him. "We should continue." At this time, Chinyu's complexion changed. He lifted a hand and slapped behind him. A figure appeared in the void and was shaken away. What keen senses! This person's voice was hoarse, and his entire body was wrapped in black fog. One could only faintly see a pair of yellowish-brown eyes, cold and gloomy. Chinyu coldly said, "Who are you? Why did you sneak attack us?" The black fog cackled several times. "It's very simple. I am very curious. Just how did you manage to pass through the sealed stone world's tempering and obtain its recognition so quickly?" Chinyu's tone became even colder. "Have you been following us for a long time?" The black fog didn't deny it. "I originally wanted to capture this woman to threaten you, but now it seems I won't have that chance. Brat, let me remind you, the sealed stone world is far more dangerous than you think. If you bring such a burden with you, sooner or later something will happen to you." Shua. The black fog flew far away, vanishing into the group of sealed stones. Chinyu frowned. He never thought that the black fog would leave, and its final words seemed to be a reminder. Just who was this person in the black fog? Yuchi bit her lips. She suddenly said, "Chinyu, no matter who he is, what he said is correct. If I follow you, I will indeed be a burden. You don't need to explain. I know what I mean. Chinyu, I remember that you have a portable space that can hold life forms. How about I go inside? No. Chinyu said in a low voice. Looking at her complexion, his tone softened. The portable space you speak of is a special identity token. Although it has a formidable defensive ability, it cannot resist the crushing will of the outside world. Unless I completely seal it off. Yu Chi's eyes brightened. Then seal it off. Chinyu earnestly said, You don't understand. If you completely seal off the token space, you won't be able to see the outside world and all light will be lost. It will be like an eternal night. If you stay inside, you will have to withstand a torment 10 times, 100 times more intense than in the replicated world. Yu Chi said, I can do it. She smiled. You seem to have always underestimated me. In the past, when I was sealed off in the Holy Emperor Palace, the pressure and fear I withstood was no less than what you have just said. But I'm still fine. Moreover, I know that you are outside, right beside me. Chinyu, I know you are distressed, but for me to enter the token space, whether it is for you or for me, is the best choice. Don't hesitate any longer. Chinyu looked at her. After a long time, he let out a long breath. He took out a jade slip and poured in his divine sense before handing it to Yu Chi. If you can't withstand it, immediately crush it. Do you understand? Yu Chi received the jade slip. Don't worry, I will listen to you. Now, send me in. Chinyu flicked his sleeves, and Yu Chi vanished. The space that came with the Saint Sun token was like a slowly closing window, finally isolating all light. In the pitch-black darkness, Yu Chi took a deep breath. As the future mistress of the Holy Emperor Palace, how could I fear the darkness? This is the best chance for me to overcome my psychological flaws. You can do it. You can do it. The figure wrapped in black fog stopped after it was far away from Chinyu. Then, like a bubble beneath the sunlight, it suddenly burst and vanished from sight. A faint voice passed through the air. It's been a long time since I've seen such a talented junior. I only gave him a little reminder. It shouldn't be against the rules, right? It definitely isn't. At the end of the voice, there was a hint of relaxed joy, as if it had put down a heavy, psychological burden. The deeper one went into the world of the sealed stone, the more spacious it became. This was because the volume of the sealed stone was constantly expanding. It gradually grew from several dozen feet, hundreds of feet, to several thousand feet. 1 year later, Chinyu sat down cross-legged. Across from him was a giant sealed stone the size of a hill. His mind was completely focused on resisting the formidable will that seemed to contain the might of the heavens and earth. He closed his eyes, and a blurry and distorted figure appeared in his mind. Even so, it was enough to shock the heart. Looking at this figure, it was like there was nothing else in the world, and his entire mind was filled with this figure. Disdainful, powerful, invincible. Chinyu's intuition told him that this figure was the one who had bestowed the undying will upon the sealed stones. He had already stayed in front of this sealed stone for over 20 days. Even so, he didn't feel anxious at all. This was because he was well aware that the sealed stones will have been tempered to a new level. Once he obtained its approval, there would surely be great harvests. What he needed to do now was to work hard bit by bit to enhance his own will so that he could obtain the approval of the sealed stone. Suddenly, Chinyu frowned. He stood up and stepped backwards, leaving the range of the will suppression. With a thought, he entered the space-time lock world. Several breaths of time after he left, 5 figures howled over. The person in the front was clearly running away as he was being chased by the 4 behind him. Lei Jun, it's impossible for you to escape. Hand over the stone bead. A cultivator roared out from behind. The person being chased clenched his teeth and cursed out loud. We agreed that everyone would use their own methods to search. It was my luck that I found the high-grade stone bead, so don't go too far. Cut the crap. I'm just asking you, are you going to hand it over or not? Don't even think about it. Lei Jun cursed out loud. Of the 4 cultivators chasing him, one of them suddenly said, We've locked onto you. He revealed a charming smile, and a yellow paper man appeared between his fingers. With his other hand, he picked up a wooden needle and pierced it through the paper man's chest. Ah! Lei Jun cried out miserably. He clutched his chest and staggered backwards. From the yellow paper man's pierced chest, a dark red color spread out like blood. The cultivator took out a second wooden needle. Lei Jun, why don't you keep running? Puff! One of the paper man's thighs was pierced through. Lei Jun was shocked. He roared out in anger. Impossible! You didn't have the chance to place a curse on me. So how could I have been locked onto? As long as a person lives in this world, they will always encounter all sorts of unbelievable things. Luckily, you will soon be able to escape from this helpless situation. Another cultivator spoke up, his expression grim. Lei Jun paled. We have been friends for many years. Don't kill me. I am willing to hand over the stone bead to you. It's already too late. What we want now isn't just the stone bead you just obtained, but also what you already have. The cursing cultivator lifted his thumb and middle finger. I want 2 medium-grade stone beads. You could divide the rest. The other 3 people frowned. After a moment of hesitation, they nodded in agreement. The cursing cultivator had a gentle expression. He said to Lei Jun, we have known each other for many years, and you are well aware of my methods. It is best if you obediently take them out. If I personally take action, you will suffer greatly. Lei Jun's expression was fierce. He suddenly lifted a hand and slapped it between his eyebrows. If you want to kill me, then let's die together. The cursing cultivator clenched his fist. With a loud cracking sound, the yellow paper man shattered into powder. Lei Jun's fierce expression froze on his face. He placed his palm between his eyebrows, but couldn't summon any strength. His aura rapidly dissipated. We agreed that the 2 medium-grade stone beads would belong to me. He turned his head and looked at the other 3 people. One of them shook his head. Lei Jun is dead, so you can only take 1. Yes, take 1. Only like this can we divide them. The cursing cultivator had an ugly complexion. He cursed out loud, fine. But remember, I will take at least 1, otherwise no one will have a good time. After clearing out Lei Jun's belongings, he had just obtained a high-grade stone bead. He hadn't had time to recognize it as its master yet, so he naturally kept it in perfect condition. In addition, there was also a medium-grade stone bead, 2 low-grade stone beads, and some other treasures. The 4 people relaxed. Luckily, there was enough for everyone to divide. I will take the medium-grade stone bead first. You can divide the rest. The cursing cultivator said. He reached out a hand to take the stone bead. But at this time, his eyes widened, revealing shock and anger. A layer of black light erupted, condensing into a powerful protective barrier behind him. But this wasn't able to block the fist that came at him from behind. It didn't stop at all. It smashed apart the black light and smashed apart the cursing cultivator's head. Shwa, a translucent little person flew out from the headless corpse. It glared at Chinyu with hatred in its eyes and then turned to flee. Its speed was so fast that it was nearly impossible to follow with the naked eye. But suddenly, the little person cried out in panic. No! As if a terrifying swallowing strength had fallen onto its body, the little person was pulled back. Chinyu grabbed it. The little person rapidly withered and vanished from sight. Within Chinyu's soul space, the cosmic sea-cross bell that had been a step slower than Purple Moon in breaking free from the seal began to cry out in excitement. It was far, far too hungry. Chinyu turned around. He looked at the 3 people across from him and lightly said, I want these stone beads. The complexions of the 3 people changed. Chinyu had killed the cursing cultivator and had even used some strange method to extinguish his soul. In truth, they didn't want to provoke such a ruthless person. But who the stone beads belonged to wasn't something they could decide. If they returned empty-handed, they would surely be punished. One of them clenched his teeth and said, Senior, we are working for Lord Frigid Flame. We can give you the medium-grade and low-grade stone beads, but please be generous with the high-grade stone beads. If Chinyu had spent some more time in the sealed stone world, he might have heard of the famous heaven-freezing Frigid Flame. But what a pity This name didn't deter him at all. "Leave behind the stone beads, or all of you can stay behind together," Qin Yu lightly said. He stepped forwards, and his aura broke out from his body, like a towering mountain. If the three people across from him could freely move around here, it was clear that they had obtained the approval of the sealed stone world. But the disparity in absolute strength wasn't something that could be made up for with a simple increase in will. Moreover, with Qin Yu's current will, he could withstand the suppression of these three people. "Since Senior isn't willing to give up, then we will bid our farewells." The three people didn't dare to say anything else. They turned and hurried away. Since this person could easily kill the cursing cultivator, he wouldn't mind killing them as well. Moreover, the three of them were filled with apprehension. Just who was this strange powerhouse? Even after hearing Lord Frigid Flame's name, he didn't care at all. Would they dare to face such a character head-on? That was no different from seeking death. Qin Yu simply didn't know that he had unknowingly provoked an extremely powerful cultivator. After searching through the stone beads, he obtained 2 high-grade stone beads, 3 medium-grade stone beads, and 6 low-grade stone beads. The wealth of that cursing cultivator was unexpectedly rich. After entering the sealed stone world for a year, Qin Yu didn't know whether he was lucky or not, but he had already experienced a will destruction once. Even though several months had passed, the scene from that time was still vivid in his mind. Within his field of vision, all of the sealed stones began to tremble at the same frequency, like countless waves fusing together. Finally, they turned into monstrous waves that instantly swept out in all directions. Qin Yu's consciousness instantly went blank, and he lost the ability to think. It was unknown how much time passed before he regained his composure. There was a deep crack on the stone bead he had fused with. The crack was incomparably smooth, as if it had been slashed by a heavy saber. Qin Yu didn't doubt that if it weren't for the stone bead's strength resisting the will destruction, he would have died at that time. Comparing hearing and seeing, the former was far less shocking. After personally experiencing the baptism of the will destruction, Qin Yu's eagerness to obtain the stone beads became even more intense. Walking all the way here, including today's harvest, he had a total of 3 high-grade stone beads, 6 medium-grade stone beads, and 15 low-grade stone beads. However, as he thought about how he and Yuqin needed the stone beads to protect their lives, the sealed space of the token was unable to isolate the will destruction. Qin Yu didn't feel satisfied at all. For things like stone beads, as long as one lived in the sealed stone world, the more the better. After carefully putting away the stone beads, Qin Yu looked through the other items. In the storage treasure of the cultivator who used the curse technique, he found a crystal rib bone. This bone actually gave him a somewhat familiar and oppressive feeling. Divine bone. It was actually a rib bone left behind by a divine spirit after it died. It had to be known that divine spirits were the highest level of cultivators that Qin Yu knew of. They surpassed the current cultivation world of the land of divinity and demons by at least 2 large realms. Even if it was only a rib bone, it absolutely couldn't be underestimated. After carefully probing it with his divine sense, he discovered something else. Within this divine spirit rib bone, there were some cryptic fluctuations of energy hidden. This wasn't a divine sense or remnant soul, but a pure power that stored information. Qin Yu carefully probed it with his divine sense. After several breaths of time, he opened his eyes, a strange expression on his face. The information stored within was a cultivation method for the soul path. By taking a cultivator's hair and flesh and blood as a medium, one could use an invisible killing curse. When cultivated to the high divinity realm, one could even condense an aura in the void and directly send down killing tribulation. It was tyrannical and strange. It was clear that the strange method that the cultivator used just now was the cultivation method recorded in this divine spirit rib bone. However, there were restrictions to this cultivation method. Only women could cultivate it, and men could forcefully perceive it. However, their cultivation speed would be slow, and they would be forced to change their temperament. No wonder that person acted so strangely just now. Qin Yu shook his head and put away the rib bone. He didn't care about what others did, but he absolutely wouldn't cultivate this sort of cultivation method. Giving it to Yu Qi shouldn't be a bad idea. Yes, he would do that. As usual, in order to avoid trouble, Qin Yu flicked his sleeves and destroyed the corpses. His figure flickered, and he flew far away. He chose another sealing stone of the same level and continued to cultivate. Half a day later, 2 beams of light howled towards the place where Qin Yu had left. After they faded away, the figures of 2 cultivators were revealed. Their eyes swept around, and their complexions darkened. That cultivator had really left. Damn, the person on the left said, Song Zhongyi, Lord Icefire's need for the stone beads is increasing. You've already failed twice during this time. If things continue like this, once the Lord becomes angry, even I will be implicated by you. Across from him, Song Zhongyi's complexion darkened. Do you think that's what I want? All right, take some from the storage first and satisfy Lord Icefire's needs. I will find a way to make up for it as soon as possible. Humph, that's for the best. The person turned and left. Song Zhongyi clenched his teeth. He didn't know what was going on, but ever since he encountered that abnormal newcomer, his luck had been terrible to the extreme. There was no need to mention the fact that he had to flee in panic that day, and then he encountered an old rival. Although he hadn't suffered a loss in that bloody battle, he had no choice but to leave early. As a result, he had managed to obtain a hunt with great difficulty, but in the end he had come up empty-handed. Now, he had actually allowed a high-grade stone bead to slip away. He feared that Lord Icefire was already dissatisfied with him. He had to find a way to find a high-grade stone bead as soon as possible. Just as Song Zhongyi was about to turn and leave, he suddenly frowned. He spread out his 5 fingers and grasped. Some fluctuations in space that hadn't completely dissipated rapidly gathered in his palm, gradually forming the outline of a figure. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.